to make sure the stream is firing up across the internet on YouTube, on Periscope, on Facebook, and even on Twitch. And YouTube always takes a quick minute, but it looks like things are alive and well. So let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful, sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and I to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. And so that's why we started this program called Watching the Watchers, so that together we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency back down upon that system with the hope of encouraging some meaningful change. We're very grateful that you are here and with us, because today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to have an impeachment party. That's right. That's what the headline, the thumbnail in our channel today, it looks like. It's an impeachment party because yesterday when we got off the program, we did some heavy analysis. We were diving into the Article of Impeachment. We were analyzing some of the claims that were being made by the Democrats. And then when I got off the show, we were poking around the internet. I was looking at CNN and Fox and New York Post, New York Times, all of them, right? Washington Post, all of them. And they were having a grand old time. Everybody was just very happy that Donald Trump had been impeached for the second time. I think Jake Tapper was doing cartwheels around CNN. I mean, everybody was just thrilled to have seen this happen in the way that they did. And they were just so thrilled and experiencing so much joy that I wanted to see if there's a way that we could partake in that. You know, I'm somebody who's been, empathetic to the president and a lot of the policies. And, I sort of sensed a little bit of a down attitude in a lot of other areas on the internet. And I thought, well, there's something we can do about this. And we have to talk about impeachment again, because if the Democrats impeach the president, well, maybe there's something we can do to get in on the fun. And I was thinking about this from sort of a criminal defense attorney perspective. I'm a criminal lawyer and I represent a lot of people who've been charged with crimes. And when somebody in our neck of the woods, in our area of law, is charged with a crime, there's a lot that goes into it. There's police reports, a 20-page police report, sort of on the short end of things. I've had hundreds, thousands of pages of police reports in cases before somebody's even charged with a crime, before this is even something that lands on the court floor. It requires a lot of work. Probable cause statements, indictments, grand jury proceedings. You have prosecutors swearing under oath that I attest that this is true and accurate, and they believe there's enough evidence here to move forward. Preliminary hearings. It goes on and on and on. And so when we were analyzing the impeachment documents yesterday, I was thinking, this thing's 5 pages. That's it. 5 pages. And they just submitted it in front of the House of Representatives, and they got the whole thing done in a day. I mean, a DUI trial or DUI case can take 6 months. I mean, I've worked on some felony cases that have taken years. They got this whole thing done in one day based off of a 5-page document. I was thinking, that's pretty easy. I think maybe I can wrap my head around that, and let's see if we can sort of piece together a mechanism by which we can join in on the fun. So I wanted to just quickly show you once again, the Article of Impeachment that was submitted in the House yesterday, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. It's 5 pages, and the first full page is just all the sponsors. So there's just a huge laundry list of all the Democrats that wanted to impeach the president. Then when we get into the meat, well, it's not really even the meat, it's sort of introductory statement here. Then we get to Article 1, the incitement of insurrection. And they're still just going through the Constitution, not even talking about anything that Donald Trump did, just the 14th Amendment, crimes and misdemeanors, Donald Trump, all this stuff. But then here in the middle of page 3, at the bottom of the page 3, on January 6th, we finally get to some language. And this is what they're very upset about. This is the language that they used in their document, right? It says right here, we won this election. We won it by a landslide. That's a quote from Donald Trump's Save America rally speech. They were very upset about that. And another line here is this one. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Oh my goodness. So those were that was the scary language that Donald Trump was using that triggered this entire impeachment proceeding. So, of course, he said that line, and it said, thus incited, by President Trump, they stormed the Capitol, and so on. They also threw in this. They knew how weak this was, so they threw in this little Brad Raffensperger phone call, just a small paragraph here, and then the rest of this is just argument. It's, well, okay, well, he did those two things, and therefore we're going to impeach him. That's the whole document, folks. That's the whole thing right there, right? That's all of what the House had. That's everything they submitted. And then they had some of their political statements where they gave yesterday on the floor of the House, making their arguments. But that's it. That's it. And I was thinking, well, I've never drafted articles of impeachment before. I am a criminal lawyer. I'm not a political lawyer. I've never been a politician, but this is pretty basic. I'm used to seeing mounds of evidence before somebody gets incriminated in my area of the law. I know that this is a political trial, not a criminal trial, but we're talking about removing a sitting president. You would think that the standard would be a little bit higher, but it's not. It's exactly what they put in this document. And the language here was very, very clear. I have a slide of it. This is what they're talking about. We go through the whole thing. It says, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We won this election. We won it by a landslide. And yesterday we went through and did a detailed analysis on the language specifically, and we sort of zoned in on the word fight. Yes, Donald Trump used the word fight 23 times in there. He was talking about, if you could look at it in context, and yesterday in the show, if you missed it, we went through and I had screenshots from the transcript where it's saying that when he says fight, he's talking about primarying an opponent, or he's talking about fighting with the media, or he's talking about something that is, benevolent. He's talking about fighting to get a Supreme Court nominee in place, and all of these different sort of fighting words, but those are in context. The last sentence is taken out of context. So even though he was talking about fighting 20 times previously in a very benign manner, in a way that any one of us would use it colloquially, they sort of took that last sentence out of context. The last time he said the word fight, they're saying, no, he was using it differently than the previous times he's used it 20 times in the speech earlier. And so that was what they were sinking their teeth into. And I thought, this is easy. Are you kidding me? All you need to do is just find one statement that a politician made and then somehow sort of tangentially, incidentally sort of connect it. So Donald Trump made this statement here and something bad happened over here. And so all we have to do is just say, well, we can make an argument to connect the two. We've got A and C, a bad statement and it's something bad happening. We need to find that middle chain, that middle link, number B, letter B, to connect the two together. And I thought, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I'm very good at making sort of, clever arguments and connecting the dots in ways that maybe other people wouldn't see that. And so that's exactly what we did. So here is just a little bit of a snapshot. Now, both documents that I'm going to share with you are available for you. If you want to look in the description on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you're watching this, you can go and download these documents. This is a template that I just made this morning, and then right before the show, I made a couple quick changes to it. But here is what it looks like, and you're free to download this so that you too can participate in impeachment proceedings. You can draft your own version of impeachment documents, articles of impeachment. Here it is. This is what I'm calling House Resolution 46. We got the 46th president coming in here soon, and this is going to be, this is going to ultimately be changed because when it goes in, this is sort of underlined. This is what it would look like, and they would put the formal House resolution number in there. Not that important. But you can see this is just a template. So if you wanted to go in and draft your own articles of impeachment, very easy to do so. All you need to do is just replace some of this highlighted text. So here, for example, now you can click the link in the description and just download this if you want. But it's very easy. All you got to do is come here and type Kamala Harris. Okay, so we'll just change that and we'll just put a little, we'll just get rid of this and we'll just say, okay, we'll just call her Vice President of the United States. See how simple that is? And so you can just make those changes all for yourself. And it's a very simple document for you to fill out, a resolution, just like over here, right? They have a resolution, and we're just going to work our way down the document. So very simple. All you got to do is go in and change it. And you can even just copy and paste this, right? Kamala Harris, Vice President, just copy and paste that, politician name, the elected position. So it's resolved that she does this, articles of impeachment, copy, paste, change, watch your pronouns. Watch your pronouns here. A lot of hims, hers, hises. Got to be careful about those. So you just go through, change your pronouns, and you just put the same name in there. Put Kamala Harris in there, change some of those pronouns. But this is where you get into the meat and potatoes. Okay, so this is on right around, it looks like page 2. And this is where you're going to want to put in your date and your facts. The rest of it is mostly going to stay the same. You may want to change depending on the politician that you're impeaching. You may want to change some of this other stuff, but I went ahead and did this all for us so that we can just get a sample on this. Now, I picked Kamala Harris because she's very easy. This one is easy. It took me about 20 minutes maybe to draft this document up. But it is a very simple article of impeachment, and let's take a look at what that looks like. Now, you can do this for, I think, for any politician, right? I could pick any politician in the country and do this. I could probably do, 5 to 10 a day. Start just impeaching Congress. If I got my office involved, I think we could have articles of impeachment for the entire U.S. government, like in a week, which we may actually, maybe I'll be inclined to do that. But let's take a look at Kamala Harris. What would articles of impeachment for her look like? All right, so over here, you can see I went ahead and drafted one document. So this is an article of impeachment for Kamala Harris. Now, she's not vice president yet, so she's not there yet. But as soon as she gets put into the White House on January 20th, this would become effective, right? You can't impeach her from the vice presidency when she's not seated yet, but she'll be there very soon. And so let's see if we can make an argument for impeaching Kamala Harris according to the same standards. I didn't come up with the standard, right? This was the standard that was introduced in the House by the Democratic House members. They set the standard. They said Donald Trump is using scary language. He's inciting insurrection because he said something at one point in time that was taken out of context or was, according to them, held in context. He was saying something that caused bad actions to happen. So it's a very low standard, right? No proof of anything, no real information. It was just 3 pages really of meat in that entire article of impeachment. So not much there. Can we do that for Kamala Harris and make a similar argument? Well, let's see if we can do it. So this is a draft version article of impeachment for Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States. I just put January 13th because that was the day that Donald Trump got impeached. And I am not a congressperson. I am not somebody who can introduce articles in the House of Representatives, but I did go through and I put my name here. Okay, Mr. Robert F. Gruler, for himself, of this resolution, submitted the following resolution, which was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. And if I were, I'd probably go and see if I could find some co-sponsors. And it says here, impeaching Kamala Harris, Vice President of the U.S., so on and so forth, resolved that the Vice President of the United States is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and the following article is submitted to the U.S. Senate. And this is the same language. It's the same exact language. I just basically copied and pasted it. I retyped it into this document from their own article of impeachment. It says, after articles of impeachment exhibited by the House, blah, 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 in support of impeachment. As I said, it's all just boilerplate language. Nothing really changes until we start getting into the meat and potatoes. Article 1, incitement of insurrection. All right, so are we going to be saying that Kamala Harris incited insurrection? Well, let's take a look. The Constitution provides the House of Representatives shall have sole impeachment power, and that the Vice President shall be removed from office for impeachment for conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So that's all we got to do right there is just kind of come up with something that loosely fits within that category, because what Donald Trump said sort of fits loosely within that category, I guess, at least according to the Democrat standard. Remember, he said, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. So that is somehow within that category. Now, this goes on, and it's also referencing the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, that any person who's engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, they're going to want to preclude that person from holding office. So again, no real facts here. Same thing that we saw in the Donald Trump articles of impeachment. But now what we can say is Kamala Harris engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States in that. So this is where the facts are going to start. So now, if you're looking back at the template, if you're following along, you're wondering, how do I fill out my own impeachment? I want to impeach people. This sounds like a lot of fun. I want to be part of this impeachment party. Well, now we're here. We're at about line 20 in the template, and you're going to want to change this based on the politician. And you can pick anyone you want. Yesterday, we played a supercut of all the Democrats who said very similar things to what Donald Trump had said. So you could easily go, after Nancy Pelosi, she was calling for uprisings in the street. I'm wondering why there's not more uprisings. You could say, Maxine Waters, I think is her name, and she was talking about, you get in their faces. And then she's talking, Joe Biden said something, I'm going to take him behind the shed and beat him, So, very kind of violent language from a lot of politicians. Pick whatever one you want. Doesn't have to be Democrats, can easily be Republicans. A lot of politicians out there that could be impeached under this standard. And I just want to ensure you have the necessary tools in order to effectively do this. So let's go back. Let's take a look at what we're going to be doing for Miss Kamala. And the facts are pretty obvious. You're probably going to remember a lot of this. It says here, on May 29th, 2020, following the death of George Floyd, anti-government protesters set fire to the 3rd Precinct, Minneapolis Police Department building, causing it to be evacuated. Remember that? I remember when that happened. The fire resulted in the total destruction of the government building and displaced an entire precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department during a public safety emergency. We're going to look at Exhibit 1. Now, on the exhibits, I just included the exhibits just for fullness, just so you can understand where this stuff was coming from. They didn't even do that in Donald Trump's statement, okay? In the Article of Impeachment, they didn't include any of that stuff. It was just sort of, they just pulled it out of context. So if you're going to be drafting your own articles of impeachment, you can leave the exhibits out if you want. If you're going to be sort of following the same rules that the Democrats follow, you don't even need any evidence. I just put some in just for a fullness, to be comprehensive. So I did get to Exhibit 1. We're going to look at it in a minute. So remember, on May 29th, following the death, the protesters come, they burn down the 3rd Precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department, literally on fire, total destruction, displaced an entire precinct of Minneapolis police during a public safety event. There were George Floyd protests all over the place. But even though that happened on May 29th, well, just a couple days later, on June 1st, what happened? Kamala Harris published a tweet on the popular anti-free speech platform, Twitter.com, attempting to raise money to secure bail for protesters suspected of committing these crimes. In the tweet, which has garnered nearly 14,000 retweets, over 15,000 comments, and 3,700 hearts, Vice President Harris said, quote, "If you are able to, chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota." All right? And we took a screenshot of that. We're going to look at it in Exhibit 2. It's on her own Twitter account. It's on her timeline. She posted this 2 days, or how many days are in May? I don't even know. But a couple days after the 3rd Precinct Minneapolis Police Department building was burned down, Kamala Harris was on Twitter. It's saying, hey, you know those people that they just arrested for some of this stuff? Here's how to donate to get them back out of custody. All right. So now, that happened when she was not vice president, right? But I saw that argument coming, so I added this paragraph. Vice President Harris allowed this tweet to remain for months while she campaigned for the vice presidency, and she continues to allow this tweet to remain on her timeline in her newly elected position. She continues to support raising funds for individuals directly responsible for the destruction of government property and the resulting violence and mayhem. See how that was? Very easy. Easy to make an argument like that. That took maybe 5 minutes to come up with that. I'm sure you could easily come up with something like that for Nancy Pelosi, for Joe Biden, for anybody else. Just pick a politician, whoever said something at a political rally, and then find something that was bad that happened after their speech. And if there's even a loose connection, you can easily make that argument. Not even complicated. Don't have to go to law school. In all this, Kamala Harris gravely endangers the security of the United States and its institutions and government. She threatens the integrity of the democratic system, interferes with the peaceful administration of justice, and imperils a lawful state government seeking to protect its citizens. She thereby betrayed her trust as vice president to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, Kamala Harris, by such conduct, has demonstrated that she will remain a threat to national security, democracy, and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law. Kamala Harris thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. That's it. Whole article of impeachment, just done. And that's available for you. So if you want to just, download that, if you want to download the transcript, or the template, no problem at all. You can take a look at it, and then there's a link in the description as well, so you can download the Democrats' article of impeachment, and you can just compare and contrast. It's basically the same thing. I just changed a couple paragraphs, a couple sentences. Not even a big deal. You can draft this up in no time. So let's take a look at the exhibits. Exhibit 1, this is a screenshot from the New York Times. The 3rd police precinct burned in Minneapolis as protests continued in May. So everything's just kind of on fire. A lot of protesters around, a lot of, destruction. People were injured, buildings burning down, everything's going on. And then shortly thereafter, Exhibit 2, here's what Kamala Harris was saying. If you're able to chip in now at the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. And there you have it, folks. Pretty simple. There's your article of impeachment. If you want to take a look on how this all works, pretty simple to do. All you need to do is when you're looking at the website, when you're looking here at our page on YouTube, you can see these links. Impeachment party document. So I want to make sure that you're all a part of the party, of course. So all you need to do is go on over here, click the article of impeachment template, click that button, boom, it's going to open up into a regular Word file. Very simple. You can just go on in here, edit it to your heart's desire, and start just impeaching people. Have a lot of fun. Impeach everybody. Impeach all of Congress. The standard is so low that basically anything you do is worthy of impeachment at this point in time. I'm pretty excited. It felt good to draft my Kamala Harris version article of impeachment. I may do some more. I don't know. We'll see how wild and crazy things get. If you have any good articles of impeachment, it'd be nice to maybe share those in the Discord because it might sort of add some levity to your life a little bit. Stuff is so ridiculous. All right. So speaking of people who are not having a good time, there are some who are having a good time. There are other people who are not having a good time. Let's change gears and talk about Twitter. So yesterday, Jack Dorsey over on Twitter came out with a very long statement he posted on Twitter addressing the tweets or the Twitter policy that removed Donald Trump with 88 million followers from Twitter. Gone with the wind, and Jack Dorsey just came out and he, this big long tweet, and it was very interesting. So I want to dive into it. The first question I had though was, well, this has been a while. On January 6th, that was over a week ago. Why is he just now coming out and giving a statement? And his statement is kind of walking back the cancellation of Donald Trump. And I was, what would have prompted this? But then I just looked over at the stock market. Oh yeah. Okay. So it all makes sense here, right? So back on January 6th, stock was looking pretty good, about 53.5. But then when they canceled over on January 11th and, sort of the fallout of that, I think they canceled on a Friday. It was a Friday massacre. So the stock market didn't open back up until Monday. Boom. It goes down. It's down by, I think, 11% at this point in time from where it was pre-deletion. And so it's just a bloodbath in the stock market. Now, this is going to probably continue to go on. You're going to see it may come back. Investors are going to be in and out of it. But we haven't really realized the full effect of what the cancellation is. People are bailing. I just got a message over on Telegram, said that they had 25 million people sign up as a result of sort of the data policy from WhatsApp going over to Facebook. And Gab servers have been down forever. I mean, people are really responding. Other governments around the world are responding. And so big tech is feeling it. And that's not a bad thing, right? You have the right to act with your pocketbook, boycott for a certain period of time, transfer services, find a new home, a lot of other different websites like Locals and different places where you can just congregate and find an alternative. But in total net effect, where we stand today, this came over from the Epic Times, 51 billion combined market value was erased since the Donald Trump ban. Social media giants Facebook and Twitter have collectively seen 51.2 billion in combined market value wiped out over the last two trading sessions since they banned President Trump from their platforms following the U.S. Capitol breach. That is a lot of money, a lot. And so, of course, you got to look at what Jack has to say through that lens. They're bleeding money. I'm sure their investors and their board and everything, they're just furious about what's going on because they're just seeing their investments just go right down the toilet, as they should. I mean, they're canceling free speech, in my opinion. So I don't have any sympathy for him. But let's go and take a look at what Jack has to say. It's actually a good statement. My first reading through this, I thought this was a well-written statement. This was very persuasive. It kind of got me feeling like, maybe he actually did think about this. Maybe he actually is trying to do the right thing. So let's look at it with some compassion to him. What I like to do anytime I'm analyzing a document that I disagree with or making an opposing argument, I like to look at the opposing document in the light most favorable to the person making the claim. So rather than going in there and having a bunch of prejudgment about what I think is happening and just reading it and being just viscerally mad about it, I just say, okay, well, let's put ourselves in his shoes. Let's see if we can analyze this in a light most favorable to him, since it's his statement. Give him the benefit of the doubt, and that's what we're going to do here. So Jack posted this at 5:16 yesterday. Says, "I do not celebrate or feel pride in having to ban @RealDonaldTrump from Twitter, or how we got here. After a clear warning we'd take this action, we made a decision with the best information we had based on threats to physical safety both on and off Twitter. Was this correct? He says, I believe this was the right decision for Twitter. We faced an extraordinary and untenable circumstance, forcing us to focus all of our actions on public safety. Offline harm as a result of online speech is demonstrably real and what drives our policy and enforcement above all. That said, having to ban an account has real and significant ramifications. No kidding. While there are clear and obvious exceptions, I feel a ban is a failure of ours ultimately to promote healthy conversation and a time for us to reflect on our operations and the environment around us. Having to take these actions fragment the public conversation. They divide us. They limit the potential for clarification, redemption, and learning, and sets precedent I feel is dangerous. The power of an individual or corporation has over a part of the global public conversation. The check and let me move my my image over here. He says the check and accountability on this power has always been the fact that a service like Twitter is one small part of the larger public conversation happening across the internet. If folks do not agree with our rules and enforcement, they can simply go to another internet service. This concept was challenged last week when a number of foundational internet tool providers also decided not to host what they found dangerous. I do not believe this was coordinated. More likely, companies came to their own conclusions or were emboldened by the actions of others. This moment in time might call for this dynamic, but over the long term, it will be destructive to the noble purpose and ideals of the open internet. A company making a decision to moderate itself is different from a government removing access, yet can feel much the same. Yes, we need to look critically at inconsistencies of our policy and enforcement. Yes, we need to look at how our service might incentivize distraction and harm. Yes, we need more transparency in the moderation operations. All this can't erode a free and open global internet. All right, so sounds pretty good. He goes on, he talks a little bit about Bitcoin. He talks about making an investment into sort of a new standard where it's a decentralized version of social media so that there is less censorship, and that type of stuff I can really get behind. I really can appreciate the fact that a guy like Jack Dorsey that is worth, God knows how much money, a lot of it, and has a lot of resources and has already built a pretty robust infrastructure in what we know as Twitter, is talking about these things. I think that's a good thing. And if he's willing to, be true to his word on that, that's better for everybody. More free speech, more decentralization. The internet, in my mind, was something that was supposed to be open and free so that anybody could communicate, share ideas, debate, challenge things, and sometimes be provocative, sometimes be vulgar, be awful human beings. They're allowed to do that because we also get some incredibly beautiful things out of the internet as a result of its openness. And so if Jack is really going to be trending in that direction, I support it and I welcome him aboard. Now, what does that have to do with the president? In my opinion, this whole thing is just a little bit too late. He says over here, this is a time for us to reflect on our operations and the environment around us. I really can't stand that language. Jack, you've had about 8 days now to think about what has happened, or what is it, 6 days since the ultimate cancellation has happened last Friday. We're about a week out of it. Have you decided what you're going to do about this? What is the policy change? Are you just going to ban? What's changing? Is anything changing? This whole language, this whole tweet thread sounded very nice. Yeah, you're right. It's difficult. Things are hard. Everything is difficult for us, but what are you going to do about it? Is this going to change at all? Is Twitter policy changing? Because there's a pretty big contrast between what you had to say, what your Twitter public policy division had to say about the Ugandan elections and what happened to President Donald Trump. One was an expression of free speech, openness, and democracy. The other was literal censorship in the name of, apparently incitement, which in my mind still has not been proven yet. Donald Trump gave a speech that had the word fight in it a couple times. Politicians say all that stuff all the time, so I'm not sure how he incited anything on Capitol Hill, even when more data is coming out saying that the attacks may have happened while he was in the middle of his speech before that last line came out. So what are you going to do about that? Are they going to invite Donald Trump back? Are they going to modify their policies? Are they going to stop censoring other people who have opposing viewpoints? Are they changing their COVID policies at all? What's happening? Well, nothing, apparently, right? He's just saying that, this is a difficult decision for us. So I appreciate the fact that he's sort of hinting that he wanted to go in the right direction. Who knows what happened behind the scenes? Maybe he was overruled or the board demanded something. But I also don't buy the anti-collusion argument. Certainly, as soon as Twitter went down, as soon as that hammer came down, everybody else followed suit. And don't tell me that these guys don't have little text groups where he's texting with Zuckerberg and Sundar over at Google and the Instagram guys. They're all part of the same, bro club over there in Silicon Valley, and they all hang out together, I'm sure of it. So they go to the same cocktail parties. They have the same disdain for the president and the president's supporters. This was just a free-for-all. The buffet line was open, and they were going in. They knew that America was grossed out by what happened in Capitol Hill, and they were going to take full advantage of it. As Rahm Emanuel said, you never let a crisis go to the waste, and this was a big crisis. All of America was sort of in alignment, at sort of revolting at what we saw happen on Capitol Hill, and they took full advantage of it. And they silenced a huge segment of the population, a massive segment. Everybody was running over from Twitter over to Parler. They shut Parler down. Now everybody's trying to go over to someplace else. Nobody knows what's happening. So what did Reverend Wright say? The chickens are coming home to roost. All right, so something similar to that. Now, where was Donald Trump going to go? I was never somebody who was really feeling sorry for Donald Trump, right? He's a president. He's a billionaire. He's got a huge audience. Anywhere he goes is going to be a new platform for him. But many people were wondering, where is he going to end up? Apparently, he was going to go over to Gab, but Jared Kushner shut that down. So this article came over from The Hill. Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, stopped the president from joining the fringe social media platforms Parler and Gab. All right, so everything is fringe now. According to a report from CNN, Kushner and the Deputy Chief of Staff, Dan Scavino, are said to have gone against other aides, such as personal chief Johnny McEntee, to get Trump not to join other media platforms, according to an outside advisor. Donald Trump attempted to use POTUS, and then he was shut down there. And so, he's just been silenced across the board. YouTube put him on, gave him a strike, and so he's being limited, and it just goes on and on and on. Now, President Trump did come out and condemned violence in an Oval Office address. I'm not sure that we have the video of this. Don't need it, really. But he did come out and he said that there's no violence. He gave a public address on camera, and where did that go? He couldn't tweet it out to his 88 million followers, couldn't post it on YouTube, couldn't do anything with it because he got silenced. Isn't that sort of fomenting insurrection? If Donald Trump is out there and he's trying to communicate to his supporters to be peaceful, and they're calling his supporters insurrectionists, he's trying to disavow them and tell them to not be violent, and he can't communicate to them. So aren't they, by not allowing him to tell them to stand down, which is what they wanted him to do, aren't they contributing to insurrection? Aren't they fostering a potential coup by eliminating the president, preventing him from not communicating with the so-called insurrectionists? Wow. It's pretty horrendous behavior over there from some of these tech bros. All right, so he condemns violence in the Oval Office address. He said specifically, "As I have said, the incursion of the U.S. Capitol struck at the very heart of our republic," Trump said from behind the Oval Office desk. "It angered and appalled millions of Americans across the political spectrum. I want to be very clear. I unequivocally condemn the violence that we saw last week. 5 people died. Make America great again has always been about defending the rule of law," he said, "supporting the men and women of law enforcement, upholding our nation's most sacred traditions and values. Mob violence goes against everything we believe in and everything our movement stands for," right? All pretty good stuff, but he couldn't communicate that to anybody. Parler's dead. Gab's not working. Their servers are overloaded. Kind of nowhere else to go. Go on Telegram. President's not on there. So, all right, maybe they are contributing to some of this stuff. What are people doing around the country? People are responding. In fact, the Attorney General out of Texas, Attorney General Paxson, has now moved against Amazon for some of their cancellation as well. It says here, according to this article from the Texas AttorneyGeneral.gov website, this is from his own website, press release, says he issues a civil investigative demands to 5 leading tech companies regarding discriminatory and biased policies and practices. First Amendment rights and transparency must be maintained for a free online community to operate and thrive. The seemingly coordinated deplatforming of the president and several other voices chills free speech. It also wholly silences those whose speech and political beliefs do not align with the leaders of the big tech companies. Every American should be concerned. It will have on the future effects it will have on free speech. Public deserves the truth. I am hopeful these companies will set aside the politics to ensure an online community with the highest American ideals. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to go about this. Yesterday, we were talking about a politician or some House representative out of the state of Florida, and he wanted to divest the state from investing in any assets that belong to Amazon, Google, or any of the other big tech companies. So kind of hitting them in their pocketbooks. And now Attorney General Paxton, and there are a lot of other Republican attorney generals out there, and attorney generals, they don't like antitrust behavior, and they investigate a lot of this stuff. So we'll see where that goes. Amazon is responding as well. So what was this, Tuesday? Feels like last month. This whole year has been so long already. But we talked about Parler suing Amazon. So Parler, for those of you who don't know, was the alternative to Twitter. As soon as Donald Trump got canceled, they were seeing signups across the board, and it was sort of an establishment platform. I wouldn't even call it fringe. There were some fringe characters on there for sure. Lynn Wood was talking about hanging Mike Pence, and for some reason that was allowed to stay up for too long, in my opinion. But it was, and so there was a little bit of, I think, feeling out their moderation strategies. They had this massive influx of people, and everybody was abandoning Twitter to go over to Parler. People like Dan Bongino's on there. I think he's an investor over there. And a lot of the mainstream sort of conservative Republican-ish individuals were over on Parler. Well, as soon as they landed there, Amazon shut down their servers, said, nope, can't use our servers anymore, even though Parler had spent a number of years, I think, on their platform and then built their entire code base so that they could operate on Amazon Web Services. So as soon as they got their internet cut off, the whole platform was dead, whole company. So Twitter sort of exiles, people who were leaving and fleeing to a different platform had nowhere to go. So Parler sued Amazon, and they were talking about antitrust and about the fact that Amazon was also engaged in a deal with Twitter where they were going to be entering into this multi-year contract. Amazon Web Services was going to be the server provider for Twitter. And so Twitter was leaning on Amazon, allegedly, or Amazon was sort of exploiting the relationship with Twitter to go and crush Parler, which is a competitor to Twitter. So it sounds very anti-competitive. Well, Amazon is responding. They're firing back. And here is the motion itself. Defendant Amazon's opposition to the motion for a temporary restraining order. So if you don't remember, Parler was asking the court to basically order Amazon to turn their servers back on. They shut them off. They said, we're not going to delete anything. We're going to give all that back to you, but you just can't host them on our platform. So they turned the light switch off. Parler was asking the judge, order Parler to turn the light switch back on. And then Amazon is responding. And here is part of their document. It says, this case is not about suppressing speech or stifling viewpoints. It's not about a conspiracy. This is about Parler's unwillingness to remove or inability to remove content that threatens public safety. There's no legal basis in AWS's customer agreements otherwise to compel AWS to host content of this nature. In other words, there's nothing that requires Amazon to host this stuff. AWS notified Parler repeatedly of its content violation, requested removed Parler's plans to address the problem. Parler wasn't willing and able to do so. They suspended Parler's account as a last resort to prevent further access to such content. So I would like to see, I'm not sure if it is in this document, but I would like to see I would like to see a list of the warnings. When did those come? Was this something that was an ongoing problem? I'm not sure that it's in this lawsuit. We'll find out. Despite Parler's rhetoric, it says its lawsuit is no more meritless a claim for a breach of contract. The facts are unequivocal. If there is any breach, it's Parler's demonstrated failure and inability to remove such content. So Amazon's saying Parler breached this, not Amazon. They should have had a more robust moderation system in place before they started having users get on there and actually post harmful stuff. There's no antitrust claim here. Compelling AWS to host content that plans, encourages, and incites violence would be unprecedented. Parler has no likelihood of prevailing on the merits. Therefore, the temporary restraining order should be denied. Parler conducts the, quote, absolute minimum of content moderation. Parler operates a social media service, according to Amazon, that has gained favor as an alternative to Facebook and Twitter. Parler prides itself on a hands-off approach to moderating user content. And they look to the homepage of Parler. It says, speak freely, express yourself openly without fear of being deplatformed for your views. Parler's CEO stated he doesn't think it's Parler's obligation to monitor the full range of its users' content. Says he promoted a laissez-faire philosophy on the content moderation. We've decided what to do. Let's just not do any curation, no fact-checking. Let people do that on their own is something that he said. Apparently, he also said, we really don't want to get into the business of kind of determining what is and what is not allowed to be discussed. So I would generally agree with all of that, right? I mean, you certainly want the ability to express yourself freely without being censored or without the little tags popping up there. This is being disputed for whatever reason. Twitter apparently has its own fact checkers. Facebook does too. All of the big platforms do. They fact check on their own, but there's questions about the fact checkers. Who's fact checking the fact checkers? And as we have seen, many of these independent fact-checking bodies are sort of filled up with people who echo the same type of Silicon Valley mindset that is troubling to conservatives in general. So what good does that do, and how can you sort of really engage in communication if you're being censored or you're being limited? Twitter has done a lot of things where you can't actually retweet a certain statement that they deem to be too provocative. And so it's chilling speech across the board. I would tend to agree with Parler's CEO. Let's see what else is in this complaint. Parler enters an agreement with AWS for web hosting services. This happened back in 2018. They signed up to host their platform. The agreement says that Parler will ensure that your content and end users of your content will not violate any of the policies or applicable law. Makes clear Parler is solely responsible for the development of their platform. And it requires Parler to immediately suspend access to content that it learns violates its obligation. Parler agreed to comply for a period of time. The agreement made clear Amazon could suspend their services, and then Parler repeatedly violated the agreement. So apparently in mid-November 2020, Amazon received reports that Parler was hosting content threatening violence. And I'd be very curious as to who was reporting this, right? Anytime that there's sort of a platform that pops up, you see this really vicious attack from the opposing side who goes and tries to get that person canceled. This happens all the time, right? Anytime you have even somebody on, a conservative, let's say, for example, Tucker Carlson says something that's a little bit provocative, there's calls across the media to boycott him, right? Have the advertisers cut him off at the knees so his show will get canceled. Happens very routinely. And I would imagine that the Republicans and conservatives do that too, although I would say with a lot less efficacy, not very good at it. The Democrats are very well organized in these boycotts and sort of very loud with their bullhorn, mandating that everybody else shuts everything down because it's so offensive to them. So, who's really reporting this stuff? Is it users on Parler who are upset about the content, or is this other people who just want the platform deplatformed? Well, we don't know. Amazon doesn't tell us, but here are some of the things that they found provocative. They reported more than 100 additional representative pieces of content, things like Fry 'em Up, The Whole Effing Crew, Jack Dorsey, You Will Die a Bloody Death. We've got We Are Going to Fight in a Civil War on January 20th. On January 20th, we need to start systematically assassinating liberal leaders, right? None of this content is any good, right? This is awful stuff to say. Shoot the police to protect these S-bag senators, capping them in the rear, and on, right? Gross language, not something that I would condone. I would never talk that way. I would never follow anybody who talked that way. I think it's bad language, but that's just bad language, right? People are allowed to pop off. This is America. Unless this is something where, this is an actual true threat. This type of stuff happens all over the place. Happens in text messages, happens on all platforms, all over the place. Happens on Twitter on a regular basis. There are literal terrorist organizations. There are child pornographers on Twitter that post all sorts of awful things. There are other world leaders who post awful things. I think there's still a tweet up from some leader in the Middle East who's saying, death to the Jews. They're going to wipe them out. And that tweet is still up there and alive and well. You can go and retweet it. No censorship there. Twitter is also on Amazon Web Services. So what is Amazon doing to discuss any of this stuff with Twitter? Or is this sort of an antitrust action against a competitor? Well, let's wrap up what Amazon has to say. AWS exercises its rights to suspend Parler's account. On January 6th, rioters supporting President Trump's efforts to overturn the election. 5 people died. Okay, so they're hyperventilating about the Capitol Hill stuff again. In response, Parler outlined additional reactive steps that would rely exclusively on volunteers. AWS continued to see problematic content on Parler. So during one of the calls, Parler's CEO reported that Parler had a backlog of 2,600 reports that violated its community standards and remained on its service. Temporary restraining order is an extraordinary and drastic remedy, and so they're asking the court to deny it. They don't want the court to tell them to turn their servers back on. So we'll see what the court has to say. If you're Parler, do you really want Amazon anymore? They just canceled you. Do you really want to be beholden to them? I mean, in my mind, truthfully, I think Parler's probably gone by the wayside, right? Unless they start their own server farm and really build a robust system, why would you ever trust another one of these platforms again? I'm a content creator. I don't know where a different platform would be for us if YouTube, something happened on YouTube, which I don't think that it will. I mean, we play by the rules here, and we're very sort of, I think, useful. But if there was a different platform that was hosted on Amazon Web Services, why would you invest all of your time in that platform, knowing that at any moment with a flip of a switch, Amazon can shut off everything that you do. I'm not speaking for me, but I'm speaking for other, for other people who sort of talk in that platform. So Parler is, I think, in trouble. Not sure how the court's going to rule on it, but we'll follow along. Now, Facebook, Sandberg deflected blame for the Capitol riot, but new evidence shows how the platform played a role. So Facebook is not out of the woods either. In the days leading up to last week's march on the Capitol, supporters of the president promoted extensively on Facebook and the Facebook-owned Instagram. They used the services to organize bus trips to Washington. More than 100,000 users posted hashtags Stop the Steal and Fight for Trump. So I would guess that Facebook probably has its own servers, but are they doing anything about this? The details emerging from the researchers have combed the service in recent days, shed new light on Facebook services. The attack resulted in the death of a police officer. So they weren't even really using Parler and Gab. Facebook Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg has sought to deflect the blame, noting the role of smaller right-leaning services such as Parler and Gab. I think these events were largely organized on platforms that don't have our abilities to stop hate, don't have the standards, don't have the transparency, she said. Growing body of evidence shows Facebook played a much larger role than Sandberg suggested. Stop the Steal hashtag widely used until Monday, when a search on Facebook reported 128,000 people were talking about it and used it to coordinate a rally, according to Eric Feinberg. 24 Republican Party officials organized at least 12 states posted to Facebook to coordinate bus trips. Bus trip to D.C., hashtag Stop the Steal. Listen up, wrote Polk County Republican. And it just goes on and on and on. We got a meme was posted on Facebook called Operation Occupy the Capitol, promoted the hashtag 1776Rebel. According to the screenshot posted by Media Matters, we the people are the rightful masters of Congress and the courts. They're all there. So Facebook was just as guilty as the rest of them, but Facebook didn't cancel itself. Twitter didn't cancel Facebook. Amazon didn't cancel. They all are sort of in the same alignment in terms of their politics. The people who were inside the building, they're going to stay nice, safe, and warm. They're going to kick everybody else who's not politically aligned with them outside of the window, outside of the door. Say you're out on the streets, you get to suffer in the cold. So double standards? Absolutely. But we'll see where it goes. This might be the impetus for some type of action in Congress. I've been saying for a long time, I don't think anything's going to happen about Section 230 because the Congress people know who their real masters are, and it's the big tech people. They don't want to anger them. They don't want to anger the Google gods or the YouTube gods, because if they do, their reelection campaigns may be very difficult if Google just starts, sort of censoring them or bubbling up some of the bad content and pushing down some of the good content. So they're very skittish of having to go and duke it out with big tech. But stuff like this may cause enough of a frenzy amongst other Americans that maybe they'll be prodded into action. We'll see. Let's change gears. Let's talk over about the Capitol Hill investigation, because this is continuing to develop. Just in, as of 19 hours ago, CNN reports that federal investigators have indications the U.S. Capitol riot may have been pre-planned. You're kidding me. No kidding. All right. So according to Eric Gritans, it says that Jay Solomon reports that the D.C. police rejected his Freedom of Information request for records pertaining to their investigation of the siege of the U.S. Capitol. The reply says the release of the records would be, quote, personally embarrassing. All right, so I've been very curious to see what other information comes out about this stuff. A lot of questions about the timeline, a lot of questions about, I saw that there was a BLM protester who was also arrested and just indicted today. So, multiple other groups in there. Really want to break this down. Who had the stand down order for the police? Why were some of the resources from Mayor Bowser, why were they denied on January 5th, the day before they came in? Why did the chief of police, Sund, who said to the sergeant of arms for the House and the Senate that, hey, I've got concerns about this thing, why did they turn him down and say that it was on the basis of optics? A lot of questions here. And the FBI and the Department of Justice have indicated they're going to be investigating this for a long time. So I am very interested to see what comes out of this. Let's listen in on this clip and see what this one has to say.
What's the latest right now that we know from the interviews that we're doing with investigators, with police?
So I've been told that some of the key security people in the Capitol, the sergeants of arms of the House and the Senate, and the Capitol Police Chief, all three who have resigned,
yes,
have had some contact, some form of interviews with the Metropolitan Police Department, which is the lead investigative agent now.
Yes.
We FOIA'd those reports this morning, and we got our good colleague, Natalia Ministato, stands right behind us here.
Yes.
She got a response back almost instantly from the police department saying, We're not releasing the information, and here's why. It's going to be personally embarrassing, privacy invading to release these information. It doesn't make sense.
Wow.
These were public officials. Their job was security. What they told the police ought to be a matter of public record. We're going to fight for those documents.
Yes.
But something tells me what's in those documents has some very big relevance to what happened on the Hill. And the question I have is, what did Nancy Pelosi, what did Mitch McConnell know about these threats beforehand? If they didn't know, it's an intelligence failure of the police. If they did know, there's something they didn't tell us before we went into this impeachment round today.
Yes, I agree completely with that. Now, what he's talking about, I don't think is particularly unusual. When you do FOIA requests, especially from big government agencies, you may have seen some of these documents floating around. I've actually covered some of them on the channel. You get a document and the entire document's blacked out. And there's some language, I think it's a B6 exception. So when you look at the Freedom of Information Act, it does say that you get access to certain things, but other things is privileged and it's protected. I think it's there's an exception in there, B6, something like that. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it allows them to prevent you from getting information that would be personally identifiable or personally embarrassing, or there's some personal reason for it. So it's sort of a big catch-all. Just the fact that they used it in this case doesn't mean, in my mind, that there was something that was sort of personally embarrassing. It's just a catch-all. They just say, this is... we can't let you have that. So we're just going to use this exception, and we're going to sort of squeeze it on into this, personally embarrassing category. And we're just going to black out the whole document so you can't get anything. And I would guess that is exactly what's happening here. Would absolutely love to see what's in that document. Would love to see it, because I think that there are a lot of problems here. A lot of miscommunication, multiple failures, sort of a systemic failure, or just intentional oversight, intentional malfeasance. I would love to think that that's not the case, but we'll find out. Now, this is going to be, I think, a bipartisan investigation. I think people on both sides are very angry about what happened for the wrong reasons, or for different reasons, not necessarily wrong reasons, but just for different reasons, right? The Democrats are largely thinking that the cops were all racist and they just let everybody in and they were part of the coup, and there's an unequal system of justice. Kamala Harris was saying sort of the distinction between two tiers of justice: the people who shower before work, the people who shower after work, and some of them get prosecuted, some of them don't. So sort of, bringing in a lot of divisive language there, but that's on the left side. On the right side, a lot of people want to deny that this was anything to do with Donald Trump at all, right? One of the main claims that when we were first going through this that I saw a lot of, I got a lot of emails about it, a lot of tweets about it, people saying that this wasn't Trump supporters, this was Antifa, this was BLM. And I was looking at the evidence, and I was looking at the people who are really investigating Antifa and BLM, guys like Andy Ngo, Ian Miles Chong is very plugged in with a lot of this stuff. And they're telling us, no, this wasn't Antifa, guys. This was Trump people. And Trump, just like any other political movement, is going to have a fringy element on the end of it. Doesn't mean that every single Trump supporter is a part of this. I would say 99.99% of them are not. A very, very small percentage of people who wanted to go and cause ruckus, but they're still part of that group. So just call them what it is. And so, largely what they have been saying is that this whole thing was coordinated. This was sort of instigated. There may have been intentional lessening of security so that something would happen that would detract from the underlying issue, which was investigating the electoral fraud, investigating the counting of the electoral votes, or allowing those debates and speeches to go forward on the floor of the House and the Senate. They wanted to interrupt that. And we've sort of speculated with that and played that idea a little bit. There are a lot of people who benefited from the Capitol Hill riots. A lot of people. Most of the senators who didn't want to be in the limelight. Mitch McConnell, I would say, certainly got a big benefit from this. He did not want this to even hit the floor. He was doing his very best before January 6th, when the votes were to be counted, doing everything he could to sort of prevent senators from joining in with the House in order to open the floodgates of objections and then calling for debate. He didn't want that to happen. So kind of got his wish, because it didn't really happen. It was an 8-hour delay. They came back in the late of night and they passed they nominated Joe Biden. He got elected and read into the congressional journals. That was the end of the day, and it happened in the dark of night. We all woke up on Thursday morning, I think it was, on the 7th, and it was done and over. So they got a lot of benefit out of that. And people are trying to investigate that, sort of peel the layers back and figure out what really happened here. And like I said, this is a bipartisan thing for different reasons, but at least we've got both sides wanting questions answered. We got both sides now coming and saying, hey, what the hell happened here? This is coming from Representative Mikie Sherrill, and she says, today I joined with more than 30 of my colleagues in requesting an investigation from the acting House Sergeant at Arms, the acting Senate Sergeant at Arms, the U.S. Capitol Police into the suspicious behavior and access given to visitors on the Capitol complex on January 5th, 2021, the day before the attacks on the Capitol. And so I'm not sure where she's from, but this was her letter. She's sending it over to the Sergeant of Arms, Capitol Police Yogananda Pittman, talked about that individual, and the Sergeant of Arms for the Senate says, all of you three, we write today to request an immediate investigation into the suspicious behavior and access given to visitors at the Capitol complex on Tuesday, January 5th, the day before the attack. Many of the members who signed this letter, including those of us who served in the military and are trained to recognize suspicious activity, as well as various members of our staff, witnessed an extremely high number of outside groups in the complex on Tuesday, January 5th. This is unusual for several reasons, including the fact that access to the Capitol has been restricted since the public tours ended in March of last year due to the pandemic. The tours were being conducted on Tuesday, January 5th. There were noticeable and concerning departure from the procedures that were in place on March 2020 that limited the number of visitors at the Capitol. These tours were so concerning that they were reported to the Sergeant of Arms on January 5th. So there should be a record of that, right? We should see some of those reports that were being made. Visitors encountered by some of the members of Congress on this letter appeared to be associated with the rally at the White House the following day. The group left the White House and marched to the Capitol with the objective of preventing Congress from certifying our election. Members of the group that attacked the Capitol seem to have an unusually detailed knowledge of the layout of the Capitol complex. The presence of these groups within the Capitol was indeed suspicious. Given the events of January 6th, the ties between these groups inside the Capitol, the attacks on the Capitol need to be investigated. And here are some of the questions that they are asking. It is important we feel safe in the halls. We applaud the Sergeant of Arms and the Capitol Police for their efforts, but the fact remains there were an unusual large number of groups, and we've got questions. Please provide answers to these following questions, and I would like to see the answers to all of these. Are the logbooks of the Capitol complex visitors inspected regularly and collected in any type of database? So they want to know who was there on the 5th, on Tuesday. Do additional law enforcement agencies have access to that? Does the Sergeant of Arms track visitors by members? Do they ask for ID from visitors? Do they provide, if they do get that information, will they provide it, including names of members or staff who are part of these tours? So I think what they're trying to do here is sort of connect this to certain members of Congress. There's been a lot of this that, some of these people were sort of facilitating this, bringing them on tours, showing them around, giving them a lay of the land so that when they came back on the 6th, they would have more access. And my goodness, if that is true, that is the biggest scandal, of my lifetime for sure, right? If one of our own Congress people was giving tours to insurrectionists who were going to go and storm the Capitol the following day, good Lord. Right, that would be wild. So I would like to know the answers. Does the Sergeant of Arms, the U.S. Capitol Police, do they enforce members signing in guests? So if different House representative members, do they need to sign their people in? Do they have logs of those who signed in on the 5th? Do they provide that information? Will they provide that information back to this sort of committee? Have any law enforcement agencies requested these logs? What would prevent you from permitting a visitor from entering the building? What tracking do you employ to ensure that one staffer did not bring more than their allotted, quote, official visitors through multiple entrances? Are there video logs of the days in questions? If yes, will you give them those? Is there facial recognition software used for identifying those people? If so, will you give us those results? Are any of the individuals recorded in the Capitol being investigated for their role in the insurrection the following day? All good questions that I would like to know the answers to, and I'm glad that she is asking them. Many of the members who signed this letter, including those of us who have served, okay, we already got that, and this is everybody who signed it. A lot of members of Congress, a lot of them. Mikie Sherrill, Catherine Clark, Frank Pallone. I don't really recognize any of these names. Let's see, anybody here? No, Mike Levin, Ted Lieu. Yeah, we know Ted Lieu. He was, I think, the sponsor of the impeachment articles, and some other people, right? So probably mostly Democrats. But good questions being asked nonetheless. Let's take a quick look at one more story about one of the Proud Boys who was just held without bail. Federal judge denied bail for Eduard Florea, a self-proclaimed Proud Boy supporter. Ordered him detained in federal custody while he awaits trial. He apparently possessed more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition. U.S. Magistrate Judge Sanket Bolsaria said Wednesday He posed a significant danger to the community, a premeditated plan to exact violence. Posted several threatening statements before and after and during the attack. These included comments about a U.S. senator-elect and travel plans as part of a group with guns cleaned and loaded. Defense lawyer urged the court to release him on a bond secured by him, his mother, and his wife. This is not a case where he was found committing an act of violence. Federal officials later determined that he was neither in a car nor in Washington at the time of the Capitol riots. Mr. Florea is not charged with making an online threat or participating in Capitol violence on January 6th. Asked the judge to keep him in custody, calling him particularly dangerous. He admitted to operating an account on Parler, a social media platform favored by supporters of the president, posting several threatening statements last week. On January 6th, the day of the attack, he commented on another user's post, recently elected to the Senate, saying dead man can't pass S laws. In a series of messages posted hours later, wrote that 3 cars of armed patriots were en route from New York to Washington, armed and ready to deploy, just waiting for the word. On Tuesday, federal agents searched his home in Queens. They found 1,000 rounds of rifle ammunition, 24 shotgun rounds, approximately 75 combat knives, 2 hatchets, 2 swords. According to documents, he admitted they belonged to him, so that's what he's being charged with. It's deeply incorrect to make that suggestion. The judge said Mr. Florea is a felon. He faces a sentence of up to 10 years in prison if convicted. So this guy was not even in D.C. during the Capitol Hill riots. He posted something naughty on Parler. They investigated him. They found he's a felon. He's in possession of a lot of ammunition. If you're a felon, you're a prohibited possessor. So you can't possess those. You can't possess weapons. If you're convicted of a felony, you lose your right to firearms. You got to give all those up. So yet another Capitol Hill rioter who was not even rioting at the Capitol, wasn't even there, just posted some mean things on Parler, which led to an investigation, which led them to his home, which led them to finding ammunition. That's what he did. Okay? That's it. That's it. Wasn't even in the building. All right. We're seeing a lot of this, folks. A lot of sort of criminality on speech. His language is what got him in trouble, not anything that happened at the Capitol building. Now, you may disagree with what he said. What he said was provocative. Armed and ready to deploy. We are just waiting for the word. Okay. Was he really? Was he just sort of make-believing? Was he LARPing, live-action role-playing? Or was he serious? Because he didn't even travel over there. All right, let's jump into the super chats. Probably going to be a little bit of a shorter show today. Let's take a quick look. We got Seiji Takahara says, Japan has only one emperor, and that is Naruhito, and Reiwa, beautiful harmony. After that of Heisei, peace everywhere. We would rather keep U.S. defense. That sounds good to me, Seiji. Sounds good. I think what the U.S. and the Japanese people have, it works, right? Currently, I don't know that there are any problems with it, but I don't live in Japan. We have another one from Cheryl Myers. Says the Georgia Secretary of State says only 2 felons voted. Does that label stay with the person after a sentence is served? Felony conviction bars gun possession. You are only a felon when incarcerated. Doesn't make any sense. Trump says 66,000 voted. It's a good question, Cheryl. So what happens, at least in Arizona, I'm not sure how some of these other states work. In Arizona, if you're convicted of a felony, you are permanently a felon. Permanently. It doesn't just automatically go away. You can do something to sort of remove that. It's called a restoration of civil rights. It's really not a complicated process. It's sort of a 6-7 page document you can fill out on your own. You can have an attorney help you with that. But it's a restoration of your rights. And you say, look, I've served my time if you had to serve time. I completed my probation. I've paid all my fines. I haven't committed any new offenses. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. It's usually good if you can also justify why you want your rights restored. You know, it could be something as simple as, I just want to participate in democracy again. You know, I'm doing this and I'm seeing this happen and I want to vote. It's a pretty good reason. Voting is important. It's a civil right that we value very highly in the U.S. And so you could put something like that. Now, if you wanted to get your gun rights back, for example, it's usually a little bit of a hurdle, especially if your underlying offense, the reason you got convicted of a felony in the first place, if that had to do with guns, like if your offense 10 years ago was armed robbery, they're probably not going to give you your guns back. Probably not ever, unless you can really, really come up with a compelling case. Something like, well, I want to be a police officer now, or I want to be a security guard, or I have this sort of big public profile and I want to protect myself with a firearm and I just want to be clean and by the book. You know, you could come up with a justification for it, but it's much more of a hurdle. If you just want to vote, if you say, I want to restore my rights, and be able to vote. I want to set aside my felony, sort of expunge my felony. You can do that in Arizona, and I would imagine many other states as well. We have Christopher Morial, who says, Arizona full forensic audit this week. Look at the last 3 appearances, Pelosi, AOC, Biden, all dressed like they're going to a funeral. They know they've been caught cheating. They're seething and desperate. So I haven't seen that about the full forensic audit this week. I wonder, so that's in Arizona. I wonder who's paying for that, because I'm sure that is going to be pretty expensive. But I would like to see what the results are. I know they started a very limited audit. I think Kelly Ward's lawsuit was to that effect. She had it where they did, I think, a very initial audit of 100 ballots that showed a pretty big swing, actually, a 3% swing in favor of Donald Trump. But then they expanded that. I'm not sure how many other ballots were included in that audit, something like 2,500, and then they really didn't find much change at all. But there was an underlying question about how they were doing these audits and how they were counting the ballots, whether they were in the correct buckets, in other words, precincts versus tabulation centers. We can get into the weeds on that, but no, I mean, I haven't noticed a funeral attire, but that wouldn't surprise me. Anyone know of a good news group? An old form of discussion like this before, WW Web, even has their own protocols and software, old school, totally. So Seiji Takahara is talking about maybe, what's it called? News groups? I kind of remember those from back in the 90s. People would, you had to Usenet, something like that. I can't recall. We have Christopher who says victory. Thank you, Christopher, for that. Very nice. Appreciate the support on that. And I actually have not seen that one. The, what is that? A rhino? Is that a hippo? Hippo. It's got to be a hippo. Hippo victory. Thanks, Christopher. Much appreciated. Saving Mama says, have you seen all the new bills brought into the House? Scary stuff being passed in the country. So I have not, actually, Saving Mama. I haven't taken a look yet. I'm going to imagine that it's going to be an onslaught. They've got the House. They've got the Senate. They've got the presidency. Get ready for a ride. I expect there to be a lot of interesting bills coming up. Chris Wolney says, one-party government, checks, balances, and oversight, separation of powers, sovereignty of states, due process will truly just be an illusion. Well, we're going to try our best to not let that happen. You know, I am a big believer in following the rules. And if we can do anything to hold them accountable to the rules, we'll do that. I just drafted articles of impeachment for you. Chris, take a look at those. I'd impeach everybody. Just have fun with it this weekend. Just start impeaching. Draft and impeach everybody. It may not do anything, but it's pretty dang therapeutic. Good to see you, Chris. Thanks for the support. We have another one from Patrick Booty. In your legal opinion, should Pennsylvania sue Texas in Supreme Court to overturn their election now that they have proof of fraud, or just prosecute it? So I think you got them reversed a little bit here, Patrick. So Texas was the one suing Pennsylvania originally. So I'm not sure why Pennsylvania would sue Texas unless they're mad that they got sued by Texas. And I'm not real sure what has changed, you know, what would have come out that would cause them to reignite a lawsuit. And even if they did, if there was more evidence, the Supreme Court has already said that Texas doesn't have standing over this issue. So Texas can't sue Pennsylvania regardless. There could be a lot more evidence, but the Supreme Court doesn't care because they said Texas can't sue another state. And they're probably going to just stick by that for the foreseeable future. We have Sharon Quidney who says, impeachment frenzy. I love it. Yeah, Sharon, I want us all to be part of the game. I want us all to have some fun. Democrats are having a grand old time. They're doing cartwheels, backflips, high fives, slam dunks. Donald Trump is impeached twice. They're having a great time. Well, now we can join in on the fun. Isn't that fun? We have Beth Coddington. Hey, Robert and friends, love it. Did you hear that Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia plans to draw articles of impeachment on Biden January 21st? I saw her on Greg Kelly. I did see that. I was looking for a draft of her articles. I wanted to see what she was going to come up with. But, you know, if she hasn't drafted anything yet, she can certainly use my template. It's available for free right in the description. So she can use it. Any other, local people can use it. Any other representatives can use it. Very easy, very simple. And you can draft your own version if you want and send it to them. So if you have a different reason why Joe Biden should be impeached, why don't you send that over onto Marjorie Taylor Greene? You can draft it up for her. All she just needs to do is copy and paste it and just go right into the House of Representatives and submit it. We've got good to see you, Beth. And hey, Beth, by the way, I did watch that other video that you were mentioning. So Beth sent another video from the Epic Times that was an excellent breakdown, by the way, of sort of he's interviewing this woman, an Asian woman, maybe from China, sort of a thick accent, and she's walking you through the video footage of what happened on the Capitol building. And there's this sort of weird guy who sort of, is given a helmet by the police, and he puts on this, he looks like an agitator who may have been somebody working with the police. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. And then there's just a lot of coordination. It's a very interesting video. I think there's going to be more to that in the near future. But thanks for pinging that for us, Beth, and I appreciate it. We have another one from Frank Carr. Delete Twitter, DM your friends, tweet and delete. Tweet and delete. I like that. That's something that Johnny Cochran would say. Do the same to your Facebook. The Silicon oligarchs must learn the value of free speech. I would like to see them come to a reckoning a little bit. Not a violent reckoning. Peaceful. All right. Peaceful. But yeah, they got to know, there are repercussions for just canceling entire demographics, especially in America when we're supposed to be talking about free speech and civil rights and democratic discussions. They're just nixing a whole segment of the population. And I think it's gross behavior. Sharon Quidney says, this is the best show ever. Thanks, Sharon. I was having fun with the impeachment stuff. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Turd Ferguson says, love the template. In fact, fun fact, Mitch the Turtle could lead Republican senators to expel Kamala from the Senate. Then couldn't be the 51st vote. Yeah, Kamala. Hey, look, I didn't set the standards, okay? I didn't come up with the standard. The Democrats did. If you say something bad, and then something bad happens after you said something bad, and even if that's something bad is like marginally bad, if they can like make an argument for it or interpret it one way, then that's enough. All you got to do is just connect the dots. They said something questionable, let's say, something bad happened. If you can connect the two, boom, that's impeachment. You don't need anything else. You just need like 4 pages, a small paragraph, some minor adjustments around the margins. You're good to go. And the Democrats, as we saw, they'll just pass it. No problem. Very limited debate. They can get the whole thing done in a day, like an afternoon, really. And if we start getting this into a process, sort of like an assembly line, everybody's just drafting articles of impeachment and just shipping them out to all of these Congress people. I would love to see Republicans impeached, Democrats impeached. Congress has like a 13% approval rating. Folks, this is the solution. Let's just get rid of all of them. Impeach everybody. It's an impeachment party, and I'm glad that you're here to join us. We have another one from, where'd that go? Chris Wolney says, one-party government, the Biden and Harris impeachments will go nowhere, especially if Clinton got away with the server scandal and the Trump attorney general did nothing. Yeah, it's probably true, right? It's probably true that nothing's going to happen. And quite frankly, the media is going to come back out and it's just going to make, it's going to just bury the Republican. Any Republican who tries to go in there and submit an article of impeachment is going to get skewered as, a political ploy, as trying to sour a new administration, somebody with sour grapes, somebody who's just mad that they're losing. And there's probably going to be more calls to expel that person and to investigate them and impeach them. And so you may ask yourself, is it worth it? Well, I think so. Totally. Absolutely. I would be doing it all day long. Impeach everybody. Impeach them all. If this is the standard that Washington wants to employ, then everybody should exploit it. And we'll see where it goes. I mean, we're at the point of absurdity. If we don't call out the absurdity anymore, then it's just going to continue on. So, I certainly encourage just impeachment bonanza across the board. May not go anywhere. Who cares? We have Elisa Fossey says Jack Dorsey's recent statements are just a farce, face-saving tactics, and empty unless he restores people's accounts. Thank you for your show. I think it's a good opinion, Elisa. I mean, like kind of what I was thinking. It sounds nice. It sounds very good. If you read there's a little bit more to his statement where he's talking about investing in an open free speech platform and that type of stuff. But what's he going to do now? What's he going to do today? Is he calling on Amazon to reinstate Parler? Is he calling on any of these other big tech bros to do anything about it? No, right? The damage is already done. So coming out with a mea culpa 6 days later doesn't really do much of anything. I think it was a stop the bleeding type of a statement to sort of stop the investors from being so spooked. What are you going to do about this? Because other countries now are saying that, well, they can't use Twitter anymore. If Twitter can just unilaterally shut off the leader of the free world, Donald Trump, from 88 million people. Remember, this is not just about Donald Trump being able to speak one direction. This is about people being able to receive that information. There are people out there, myself included, who leaned on Trump's Twitter account to see what the heck is going on, right? It's the best source of information directly from the president. Pretty good. Pretty neat thing in a democracy that one leader can communicate to everybody directly without the filtering of the garbage mainstream media. Now, as it stands, they get to filter everything again. I don't want them as a filter. Let's just hear from the person who said it. And a lot of other countries were embracing the same model. But now that we see that Twitter can just axe anybody they want at any time they want, other leaders are condemning the behavior. I think Angela Merkel from the Germany had some issues with this. I think Mexico had some issues, and it goes on and on and on. I saw a tweet from somebody in India that was saying the same thing. Hey, we use this as a platform. It's highly integrated into our system of communicating with our constituents. Now that that's not a feasible option anymore, they're going to be looking elsewhere, and Twitter is feeling the burn. We have Beth Coddington says, "You are so kind, Robert. Where was his concern for the safety of the hate from the other side? Not buying it." Yeah, so I think she's talking there, Beth, about Jack Dorsey. Yeah, I don't buy it either. We can look at it in a light most favorable to the guy, but ultimately, it's just another meaningless speech. We have Seiji Takahari says, "Template was hard code Kamala at the top. Here is my impeachment of R&R from the House of Hiroshima resident 39-2330, fixed before the Senate comes back from Sukiya." So I think Seiji is impeaching us. It's all right. Impeach away, my friends. I'm sure I've said something sometime that probably resulted in something. So according to that standard, you can impeach me also. I'm not even going to be mad. That'll be okay. I'll have fun with it too. We have Chris Wolney says, "Twitter stock drops 12%. That's Dorsey's motivation." 100%, right? It's just a financial stop the bleeding. Just really trying to just stop it. Saying, hey, investors, look, mea culpa, I'm sorry. Maybe this will settle your nerves a little bit, but I think the damage is already done. I mean, people are just, honestly, I will tell you this. Twitter feels different to me. I don't know if this is just sort of confirmation bias, but it just feels a little bit different. It feels like a lot of the interesting people who were, they would agitate things and they would say things that would be provocative and they'd encourage a lot of debate, but it just seems like everybody's a little bit more muted right now. Not everybody that I follow has gotten kicked off, but just across the board, everything is just a little bit quieter. Everybody's a little bit concerned, especially some of the big accounts, the ones that have a ton of followers. I don't have any because I don't hardly use the thing other than just consuming the media on it. But I'm trying to post more and stuff, but I don't really do it much. But the point is, it's just kind of muted. And so that's a hard thing to come back from. When you really sort of hit your user base, your audience in the stomach, I'm not sure that they're going to forget that, and that's exactly what Twitter has done. We have Seji says, "What is the difference between online and offline harm? I mean, with everyone having a phone these days, there is no distinction to the commoner." Seji, I love that, to the commoner. Yeah, there is no distinction to the commoner. I mean, basically everything's online, right? Everybody's plugged in all the time, and I don't know what that distinction is. I mean, I think they're really doing their best to sort of connect the two by saying that people posting and saying bad things through text messages. Yesterday we talked about Cleveland Meredith Grover Jr. and he was ultimately sort of arrested and charged with bad text messages. No Capitol Hill violence. He wasn't there. He got there the day after or that night after it was already over. But he's being investigated and prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for bad text messages, because he said some nasty things over a text message. He got into a fight the next day with somebody else, a little disorderly conduct there. They said that he was going to go shoot and kill Nancy Pelosi. That didn't happen. He didn't even shoot the pedestrian on the side of the road. He got into a physical altercation, didn't use a gun, but they want to imply that he was going to use a gun, maybe, probably. So I don't know how you can just automatically connect the dots and say because somebody said something bad that they're now a murderer. It's too soon for me. I mean, I think you need something more than that. But the U.S. Attorney's Office is moving forward full speed ahead. We got Christopher Morial says, "This is the communist cookbook. Outrage, silencing, canceling, disarming, detaining, re-educating, sterilizing, exterminating. Stop calling the Democrats. They are communists in disguise." Well, I'll keep calling them communists until I'll keep calling them Democrats, just because it's a little bit more identifiable, a little bit less provocative. But I would agree with you on that, Christopher. I think there are some communist tendencies for sure, especially with some of this limitation of dissent. I told you on the show I've been to China. I know how that sort of operates. I mean, it was a weird experience when I was over there because we had sort of a minder that would follow us around everywhere. When I went and visited the Great Wall, there was somebody always keeping their eyeball on you, like literally. Like who is this guy following us? It was a minder. That's what they did. Not part of the tour, not part of anything. Just kind of following you around because you're Americans. Weird. Anyways, Mr. Awesome says, Project Veritas has Jack on video saying this isn't going to stop, referring to taking down Trump and other accounts. Check it out. I will check that out. Yeah, that sounds like very interesting information. I would like to see if there is any undercover video because, look, Jack's a CEO, right? And what you do as a CEO is you manage the reputation of your company. You're sort of a spokesperson in many ways. You make some of the big decisions, but you got to go out there and you got to take the tough questions. And so he came out with a nice public statement that sounded very, sort of, we're going to try to do better. But is that what's in his heart? Because his words don't match Twitter's actions. And the actions are what matter. Christopher Morial says corporate communist. So I don't know if you're talking to me or you're talking about the Democrats, but yeah, there is this really, really sort of close enmeshment between our political class and our corporate class. They're basically one and the same, as far as I can tell, which is sort of not communism as much as it is fascism, which is weird because they're supposed to be anti-fascists. Seji says Jack Hipster Rasputin is trying to avoid the monopoly, antitrust, and racketeering. They already ganged up on Parler instead of being calm apart. Yeah, so antitrust, that's what Parler's suing them for. Monopolistic practices, I think they clearly are a monopoly at this point in time. There really are no competitors. They're the only one out there. And the people that they do business with also eliminated their competition. So you could easily make collusion arguments, racketeering arguments, antitrust arguments all day long. We have Elise Fossey says, if the story about the FBI claiming pre-planned capital violence is true, could it exonerate Trump? Well, so in my mind, I don't know anything that has really implicated Trump. So, I mean, I would sort of disagree with the premise. I get your point. I'm not trying to be disagreeable with you, but I don't know what I don't know what the evidence is that Donald Trump incited the Capitol Hill riots, right? We went through the language that the Democrats themselves have identified. It's this fight, fight, fight language at the end of his speech. But there's more evidence now that the Capitol was already being breached before he stopped speaking. So how could Donald Trump incite that before he stopped speaking, before he even uttered that sentence that they have such a problem with that they put in their article of impeachment? So I just don't even know that the premise is there that he caused anything on Capitol Hill. So what they do in lieu of that argument, because they know it's such a weak argument, is they say, no. It wasn't just the Capitol Hill riot. It was everything else that he's been doing for the last couple of months. Every single time he's given a speech about this election was stolen, fraudulent, we're going to fight, all of those things. You sort of look at it in the aggregate. In law, we call this sort of the totality of the circumstances, right? If you look at one little bit on its own, that's not enough to incriminate somebody. But when you consider the totality of the circumstances, this is what cops do all the time. When cops don't really have a good case, they say, well, why'd you pull him over? Or why'd you investigate that? Or why did you pull him out of the car? Why'd you open that box? Why'd you break into that house? Why'd you crack that safe? Why'd you do this? They say, well, if they don't have a good answer, they say, well, the totality of the circumstances indicates that there may have been something going on. And so we say, well, what were they? So this, and we have an explanation for that, right? They say, well, I saw this pill was sitting on the counter. And we say, there's a prescription for it. They say, well, we saw this weapon on there. Here's a permit. Okay, and so they go, well, you're right. All of those things, it's the totality of the circumstances. It's indicia of malfeasance. And so, that's what the Democrats are doing. They're just saying, well, you're right. That speech was not really that bad if you look at it and analyze the text of the language, but but he said this and this and this, and he made a phone call to Ravensburger and he did all this stuff. So they're just trying to bundle it all up into one argument, and it's very, very weak. Now, if the FBI does come out and say this is all pre-planned, I think it just supports the argument that I just made that you can't tie this stuff to him. It's such a ridiculous standard, but they're going to continue to do it. Lauren Robinette says, Rob, should discuss the big MS-13 arrest. I see you, Mr. President. Yeah, MS-13. I saw some headlines on that. I have not read that article today, but I will. Thank you for pinging us on that, Lauren. Appreciate it. We'll take a look. MS-13, big arrests. May talk about that tomorrow. We have Chris Wolney says, legit FOIA exemptions, abuse of power, says who? So, I don't know if they're legit FOIA exemptions, honestly. I know what they are doing, but I don't know what's behind the wall. So yes, anytime you get a FOIA that has provocative or sensitive information on it, they use just a broad exception. I'm trying to remember the story that we covered. I showed it here. I think it was here on the channel, and we showed you everything. It was just a big blank black paper. There was nothing there. Every single cell that we wanted to look at was just all blacked out, and it was all B6, and it was all just totally redacted. So I don't know if it was a legit exemption, because we don't know what the information is behind that. But somebody somewhere is going to dig into this, and I think eventually it may take months. They may wait. What also happens with a lot of these investigations, I've noticed, is they drag them out for a long time. Because if they release something right now and they said, yeah, look, this was coordinated, it really was Antifa, they were, we found all this evidence that they were trying to mask themselves as Trump supporters and all of that, there would be an uproar in this country, right? It would be very, very troubling for people to learn that. It may be the truth, but they don't want to release that information. And so they'll use all sorts of justifications to keep it from coming out. But I think eventually it may come out. It may happen 7-8 months from now. It might happen next year. But I certainly think that there should be a deep dive investigation into the Capitol Hill details. Rajesh Shakar says Project Veritas released a video of internal recording of Jack Dorsey saying the deletion will go beyond inauguration and purging violence is color they want to provide. Please analyze in the next segment. So that's 2 now who say that there's this video. And I have not seen that today, so we'll probably be covering that tomorrow. We got Toots Magoots says, I hope you had a nice week. Have a nice weekend. Thank you for keeping us informed. Today's not Friday, right? Today's Thursday? Yeah, today's Thursday. Well, thanks for that preemptive, have a nice weekend, Toots. I appreciate that. I certainly hope that I do, and I hope you do too, all of you. So we'll start that after tomorrow's show. We'll be back here tomorrow. We've got another one from Sabo Abbas says, Rob, please speculate a little bit more about what actually happened at the Capitol on 5 January in light of the Mikie Sherrill call for investigation. So if I could, yeah, sure, I'll speculate on that. So I think what she's speculating, or what her argument is, or what she's sort of leaning towards, is that there were some Congress people who were bringing in outside provocateurs or insurrectionists, bad actors, into the congressional building and showing them around so that when they came back the next day, they knew where to go and what to do. And apparently what she's saying is that Congress people, which makes sense, they have some sort of special access into the building. And prior to January 5th, the Sergeant at Arms had said, no tours, okay? Pandemic, nobody's coming through here. We got to keep this thing quarantined and secure. But the Congress people themselves can bring in their own visitors. And so that's what she's asking about. She's saying, well, who were these visitors? Who brought them in? What are their names? Do you get any identification? What about facial recognition? Is there a possibility that one of these Congress people was responsible for sort of giving the lay of the land to the enemy? I don't know if that's even remotely feasible, but I certainly would like to see that question answered. I would like to see her questions answered. I got a lot of questions about all of this stuff. And I think more details about what happened and when and who was responsible and who was making the decisions. I would like to see basically every single email, every single text, every single phone call from all of the people in charge. Who was calling whom, when, what were they saying? What was the result of that conversation? What action was ordered and when? I mean, there's a lot of details. And why were some of the decisions made? Why were the police standing down? Why did they let everybody just walk out with a freaking podium? The guy just walked out with a podium. They just let him walk down the Capitol building with a podium? How does that happen in what should be the most secure building in Washington on this particular day, for sure? So I've got a lot of questions about that. We have the Wandering Mariner says, hey, great party. Good. I'm glad you're liking it. Stick around. Did you see the analysis of Ashley Babbitt video suggesting coordinated actions? Interview with Misako. Yeah, Wandering Mariner. That's exactly what I was talking about. So Beth Coddington sent that to me yesterday in the Discord, and I watched it last night, and it's interesting. If you haven't seen that video, I think it was from the Epic Times. And so if you go over to the Epic Times and if you just type that into Google, analysis, Ashley Babbitt, coordinated actions, I'm sure there's the title of it. I'm sure you will see what I'm talking about. It's very interesting. And there's weird behavior because there's one guy who sort of looks like he's with the cops and then changes his hat and then sort of tries to kind of muscle himself into the crowd almost as a provocateur, sort of like an inside man from the police. He kind of walks up from right behind the police and then sort of tries to sort of like merge himself with the crowd by getting loud and sort of rowdy. Weird. Very, very weird. Does not look organic to me at all. Good to see you, the Wandering Mariner. We have Rob. This is from Lava Java Lava. Says, would you agree that we are under a martial law, military at every state capital, controlled mass media, unchecked home invasions? You know, that's an interesting perspective, right? That sort of, we're not under a formal martial law, but sort of a practical martial law. You know, I don't know that we're there yet. I think that this is just something that's taking place in Washington, and I actually would agree with a very high security presence in Washington. I do not want to see any more of what we saw last Wednesday because, as you're seeing right now, the ramifications of it are bad. I mean, they're very bad. I understand people are angry about the election, but this made everything worse. This got a bunch of, you know, free speech, or I would say platforms that provide some speech, close those holes immediately. Donald Trump is sort of, you know, on his heels largely as a result of this. The media is having a bloodbath. Poll numbers are just, you know, in the toilet for the Trump administration, potential impeachment. I mean, the ramifications were very bad. And if something else were to happen, I would think that things would clamp down even further. You'd have more criminalization of speech. You'd have more attempts to sort of lump all of Trump supporters or anybody who's even remotely sympathetic to Trump into that same bucket. And so, you know, I'm not sure that we're in a state of martial law, but it certainly feels like there are some elements of martial law in place in certain areas of the country, in particular Washington, D.C. Don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. Hopefully that all is just lifted up immediately after the inauguration next week, but we will see. But I think your point is well taken. You know, a lot of the big tech companies, by way of example, they're saying things like, well, we're a private company and there's free speech everywhere. Right? You still have free speech because you still have the First Amendment, and the government's not taking away your ability to speak. It's only Twitter. And so it's sort of this sort of, technically, yes, we have legal free speech still, but practically not really, right? Because you can't, you know, many people around the country are locked down in their homes. Everything's digital now. Nobody even meets in person. Everything's Zoom. I had court today on Zoom, right? And we're just not in person. Everything's digital. So if you start closing down the digital places where people congregate and you stop allowing people to speak freely, even though you may legally have free speech, do you still have practical free speech? Well, you certainly got less of it now. Thanks for the good question, Lava. We got Brian Reinhardt says Trump's second impeachment under 6 hours, the fastest ever. It felt like that, right? Just boom, done. A couple pages of documents. Some intern somewhere just kind of dumped it out of their head on Trump. Fight. Okay, this sounds good. Get that submitted. Nancy Pelosi rubber stamps it. AOC's over there. Yeah, you know, they're all just out there pontificating about how outraged they are and how bad Donald Trump is. They get that thing done quickly. They can't seem to pass anything else that quickly, but good point there, Brian. Another one over from Anita Reason to Believe. Anita Reason to Believe. Please tell me your opinion of Trump's Rule 1 issues. I don't know what Trump's Rule 1 issues are. Your opinion of Trump's Rule 1 issues. I don't know what those are. I'm trying to think. What could Trump's Rule 1 issues be? I have no idea. If I learn about them, I'll tell you what my opinion is. We have the White Buffalo 84 says, did you see the AOC rein in the free press? I saw the headlines. I didn't watch the video, but yeah, it's hilarious that a lot of these individuals who are very far left, in my opinion, are saying that the press is too conservative or too center or something. I don't even know what the claim is particularly. I just saw the headline from AOC. I don't know what her full point is, but it's hysterical, right? Every single news site that I checked yesterday after the show, I think I took screenshots of them at some point, but impeachment, impeachment, glory, Donald Trump actually released a public statement yesterday condemning violence was not even on the cover, was not anywhere to be found. Nobody was talking about it because they were all talking about impeachment. They were just thrilled about it. Every headline. Oh, God, this is crushing for the president. What a monster. He's going to go out. Everything's ruined. All the good stuff he did is right out the window. I mean, they were just gleeful, gloating over it, which is why we wanted to have our own little party here today so that we could also join in on the impeachment frenzy. It's an impeachment party. We have Seji says exactly that language sucks, but if you suppress it, you cause it. Call the police and have them do warrants and due process. Yeah, that's right. Right? Yeah, the language is bad. But is it criminal? Not in my mind. John Kreutz says, Trump should pull a Snowden and declassify everything. Area 51, 52, 6, and 25. Yes. Fort Meade and Pine Gap, NSA, not to mention all the info on 1-6. So I don't know if there is an Area 52, 6, or 25, but if there are, I want them all declassified. I want to know what's in there, Area 51. Are there aliens out there, man? Can somebody tell us? I sure would like to know, and I sure hope Donald Trump does. More seriously, I would really like to see him pardon Snowden and Assange because I think those people are patriots. I just do. They exposed massive problems with our government. Government doesn't like when you do that, but it's good for the people. We can hold our government accountable. Both of those guys did that, and I don't think they should be treated as criminals. I think they should be treated as patriots, and they are not getting that treatment. I would like to see Donald Trump do that on the way out. Not optimistic about it, but I would like to see it. Lorenzo Greasy Bottoms. Oh, my goodness. Lorenzo Greasy Bottoms is back in the house. It's been a long time, my friend. Says, given recent events, how likely do you think Republicans are to win back the Senate in a couple of years? I would say, if I had to just put a number on it, 90%. I would say 90%. I think what you're going to see in these next 2 years is just going to be such a reckoning. There's going to be an eye-opening in this country like you haven't seen. I think the Democrats are very much overplaying their hand at this moment. They're seizing on the political backwind of what happened at the Capitol building. But I think once more information comes out about that, and once people calm down a little bit and they see these massive double standards and they see what happened as a result of that, they see entire demographics being deplatformed and kicked off of different social media sites, and they start to realize that this is a trend that is not healthy for the country. I think they're going to recognize that this is not right. Joe Biden, in my mind, might like the guy, very vanilla, very bland, very sort of inconsequential as a leader in my mind, somebody who's been in office for 37, 40 years, no idea what the heck he did other than pass a 1994 crime bill and sort of, bump around as a vice president for 8 years. Very inconsequential. And so if people think that he's going to be the savior of America, piggybacked on by Kamala Harris, it's going to be, it's going to be a bland, boring, inconsequential couple of years, and it could actually be pretty harmful around the margins in ways that people haven't thought about yet, particularly when it comes to speech and the ability to participate in the conversation. That is being eliminated. That stings. People feel that. They don't like that. So I don't think that we're going to be in it for a long haul. Now, if they pass some things and they seize control of different state legislatures and they put in their state board of electors and their secretaries of states all become Democratic and they sort of run the elections, you might see a perpetual Democratic Party for a long time, which is why I'm saying we got to start impeaching people. Documents are available right there in the description below. Get started, my friends. We have another one from Curtis Bartle. Says, I miss Cave Creek and Carefree. Have you been to Horseshoe or Bartlett Lake? Do they still have desert parties? So I have not been to, Cave Creek and Carefree. Those are, I'm in Scottsdale right now. Those are way far north of us, about probably 30, 40 minutes north of us. Beautiful areas, a lot of desert, a lot of cacti, a lot of beautiful sort of, it's just a beautiful space. And I have not been up there in a while. I used to go to Bartlett Lake pretty regularly, but I just don't do that anymore. It's a good time and a lot of fun, and so I don't blame you for missing it. Good to see you, Curtis. We have another comment from S. McKay. Jack Dorsey purged over 70,000 politically right-wing accounts. I'm sure he wants open and free conversation. Yeah, with a little zing of sarcasm there. I'm sure he doesn't, which is why they did that. Now, he can come out and say all day long that they want that, but actions speak louder than words. His actions are pretty bad. We've got Biden is discussing bail reform. What is your take on this as a defense lawyer? Maybe a whole new show. Thanks again. That's from the Wandering Mariner. So, I do think that there are some major problems with bail reform. I don't know what Biden is talking about because Biden was the author of the 1994 crime bill, amongst other very bad crime bills in my mind. So I would be glad, this was in 1994. So a long time ago, over 25, 26 years ago. And it was bad judgment then. I give him a lot of grief about that because he used that in more recent years as saying, look what I did. I passed that. And he was really proud of it. So he's sort of re-endorsing that. But I don't like to sort of, 24, 25, 26 years ago was a whole different time in the country. And so, politically, it was a little bit different. I still beat him up about it because I think it was bad judgment. And I think he has caused a lot of these issues that they're capitalizing on. I think everything that you're seeing with George Floyd, the militarization of the police, the overcriminalization of our society, the punitive aspect that our politicians want to impose on the justice system are not right. And I think all of those started from the 1994 crime bill and a lot of those bills in the late 1980s that Joe Biden authored or co-sponsored. And so now that he's coming out and saying, well, we've got to reform all of this stuff, and they were really piggybacking on the BLM stuff, and they were really vocal, as we saw with Kamala Harris' article of impeachment, she was raising funds for the protesters over in Minneapolis. And so they were seizing this political movement. And in my opinion, when I was seeing this all happen, I was saying, don't you people know that literally Joe Biden wrote the bill that caused the police to be this way? Don't you understand that Kamala Harris was a prosecutor prosecuting people for marijuana crimes and truancy when parents had their kids not going to school? Don't you understand that these people were sort of at the tip of the spear of the problems that we see in our criminal justice system, and now you're allowing them to exploit you and your political movement and raise funds and donate and try to campaign and raise donations off your backs? Doesn't that feel unsettling? But what can I do about that? People are gonna be more in alignment with what makes them feel good then and now. Everything that's done in the past is forgotten. Long answer there, the Wandering Mariner. But this goes back to your ultimate question. If Joe Biden now wants to come to the forefront and say, we're going to make some modifications to bail, then I would be welcoming of that. I don't know what his specific proposal is, so I can't comment on it intellectually, but I will tell you that there are problems with bail. There are a lot of people who sit in custody because they can't afford to get out of custody, and it's just a simple matter of a couple $100s. So somebody who is in custody and they can afford to post a $500 bond, they get out of custody. But somebody else with the same offense, the same background, who can't post the $500, they sit in custody for months and months and months. That's not fair. Okay, neither one of those people is a threat to society. They're usually picked up for something stupid, disorderly conduct, or kind of a bogus assault or domestic violence call, or urinating in public, or whatever it is. And they'll be held in custody, and somebody else will be released. And I think a lot of that has to do with bail and bond reform. And I just like the idea of treating people like human beings, not like case numbers and like bond amounts. And there are some things that we can do to modify some of that. But I'd have to take a look at Joe Biden's proposal. And once that does hit Congress, or that is introduced in the legislature somewhere, we'll break that down, certainly. Good to see you. We have Tyler Stokes. How much do we need to raise to get you to use all of R&R law for a week to draft articles of impeachment for all of the establishment Congress people? Well, I don't know what that would cost. I'd have to do a calculation on that. I was mostly kidding about that, but now it doesn't sound like a bad idea. It really doesn't take that much work. I think we could crowdsource it probably faster and probably do it with a little bit more, have a little bit more fun. We could turn this into a literal party. I mean, we could create a spreadsheet and just start drafting articles of impeachment for everybody on a Google sheet. I got Kamala Harris's done. I could do a couple more probably in an hour or 2 hours. Maybe we get this whole thing started and just deliver them all. January 2021, deliver 435 for the House, another 100 for the Senate. We'll throw in Joe Biden. We'll throw in Kamala Harris. Everybody. I mean, Donald Trump, they may be trying him anyways. So why don't they just run a couple other trials back to back? Not bad. We have Johnny Gomez says, let's make the statement homework due next week. Yeah, so draft them up, my friends. Very easy. You don't need to be a lawyer. Just go in and type in a paragraph about what they did. Connect A to B. Bad statement, bad action. Just connect them somehow. Doesn't even matter, because the Democrats, they did that, and it worked for them. They got it passed in like 6 hours. We have Husker Mike says 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, from Husker Mike. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. I don't know what that is in reference to, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's funny or provocative or insightful or wise, but I'm going to mull on it either way, and I'm going to try to interpret it in all of those different ways. MJ says, breaking, at Twitter Insider secretly records CEO Jack detailing agenda for further political censorship. Oh, gosh, that's beautiful. That's the 3rd super chat about that, which means this is going to be juicy. Looking forward to it. Thank you for that, MJ. Another one from Jay Mills says, Michigan judge ordered their Secretary of State to release all communications with Dominion, Facebook, Apple, etc. What is the likelihood that all the comms are actually produced in this scenario? Very good question. So, I would like to see what the order says. So usually in the order, there's some pretty good detail about what is to be included. Usually they'll set beginning dates, end dates, and they'll specify the conversations between what people, what phone numbers, what cell phone devices, what email accounts, and all of that. Usually the order is a little bit more specific than that, because attorneys will fight for this stuff for the end of days. I mean, just constantly trying to get to the bottom of it. And so the judge will want to be a little bit more specific. So if it's in the order and the judge granted it, then I think the likelihood that you'll get it is probably pretty strong, as long as Dominion is not fighting that anymore. If this is sort of a joint, so this could go one of two ways. You could have sort of a stipulated joint agreement on discovery. Discovery is that each side gets to look at each other's files. The plaintiff, the people doing the suing, get to look at the defendant's files. The defendants, the one defending the lawsuit, they get to look at the other side, so that we know what we're all talking about. And so that when we go into trial, somebody doesn't come out the day of trial and say, well, I'm going to introduce this evidence. And everybody goes, well, what the hell is that evidence? Where did that come from? Nobody was even talking about that. You don't want to allow that to happen as the cases progress. So discovery is we explore each claims, each defense. We allow each other to interview each other's witnesses and investigate the case from both sides. So you can have a stipulated agreement where you just agree, this is what we're going to talk about. This is the scope. And if that's the case, it's pretty simple. And anybody who's not complying with those rules is going to be reprimanded by the court or potentially sanctioned. And if that is the case, then I think the likelihood is very high. If it's different than that, if this is contested discovery, you can fight over discovery for months and years. I mean, you can really, really, really get granular with this stuff, and then you can get information and request more, ask the judge to expand the scope of your inquiry, and it can go on for a long time, especially in civil lawsuits. I mean, in civil cases, you can have this stuff drag on for years. In criminal law, things move pretty fast because people's rights are on the line. We've got due process. You have the right to a speedy trial. So that process is expedited mostly. But in civil cases where none of that matters or none of that applies, it can take a very long time. So it's a big, broad question, Jay Mill, and I'm not real sure that I answered it sufficiently for you. But I think the right response is we'll see. Thanks again for the question. Another one from Chris Wolney says, the DNC and RNC duopoly is real. They both don't want regulation, oversights, investigations, nor competition. We need more parties and more options. I agree with that, Chris. I would like to see a coherent third party. I would like to see one that is competent. Okay, the Libertarian Party, I think, has a lot of good ideas. I don't know that I would consider myself sort of a full libertarian. I think that there are some legitimate needs of government and some things that need to be regulated and monitored with some oversight. But as a party, it's kind of an embarrassing joke. I mean, every time they have a candidate, I covered it on the show. There was some candidate somewhere that didn't even have a headshot on his campaign website, right? It was like a selfie he took, like, hey, I'm a libertarian candidate. And he just posted it on his website. I'm like, can you get somebody to take a picture for you? Like, we're trying to run a professional campaign here. Can you step it up just a little bit? But not holding my breath on that. You know what else I would like to see is more Congress people. So this was an idea I was playing around with. I haven't really thought it through, but how about, the 435 limit cap on the House of Representatives? That came after the fact, right? They limited that. That's that's something where that could be opened back up. We could have 5,000 House representatives in there. And then you would start to see, sort of as a natural consequence, the formation of kind of mini parties within there, right? You'd have different groups that are aligning with different issues, and it would just be total madness. You'd have so many people in there that very little would get done easily, which is good, because when Congress does stuff, it's usually not good for the people. We have Richard Giambruno says, I am hereby impeaching Biden and Harris for breathing the air. Well, if you breathe the air, what are you doing? You're producing carbon dioxide. Do you know what carbon dioxide does? It heats the planet up. Do you know what heating the planet does? Causes global warming. You know what that does? It melts the ice caps. Once the ice caps are melted and Florida's underwater, guess what happens? You have rioters. What happens when the rioters are upset about global warming? They storm the Capitol, insurrection, boom, impeachment. There you go. You just impeached Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for breathing air. That meets the standard that the Democrats want. So take that one, write it up, add it to the spreadsheet. We have Husker Mike says, I am absolutely shocked that the past 3 months the media is 100% responsible. 2 minutes of hate is coming to a screen near you soon. Yeah, the media, I have a huge problem with this. This is funny. When Donald Trump first came out early in his term and he said something like the media is the enemy of the people, I was like, that's pretty provocative. There are journalists out there that they're just doing their best. They're trying to report the news factually and accurately. Fast forward 4 years, I 100% agree with him. 100%. I think the media is so problematic that it is mostly responsible for what we see in the country today. I would, if I had to put the blame on anybody, it'd be them, and mostly them. Yeah, I think that they are so doing a disservice to this country. They're passing off opinion and propaganda as real news, and people are sort of being held over from a different generation. I know a lot of people who watch CNN and watch, these platforms, and they just think of them as gospel because when they grew up, they were the news. They were more legitimate. You had guys like Walter Cronkite, who had political biases certainly, but it was a little bit closer to the reporting, and that's what they remember. Some of this, kind of this older generation, they say, well, this has to be true. They can't say it on TV if it's not true. So it has to be true. And you're just going, ugh, are you serious? Like everything they just said was a lie right there. Everything. It's not even logically true. Just think about it. And it's very dangerous. And it's where we're at. Now, I don't know, what the answer is on that. I would just say hold them accountable. I'm certainly not in the mindset that we just start banning companies. Right? I would never wake up and go, okay, well, we just have to ban CNN. Their speech is dangerous. We got to ban them. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about more ideas being brought into the marketplace. The problem with the media is that they have a sort of a total control, a monopoly on the dissemination of information. And they just keep going by canceling other platforms. Parler's gone. All of the other ones that pop up, they just buy or just throw by the wayside. And so in the marketplace of ideas, there is one part of the store that is totally underserved. That's not good for this country. We want more ideas, more conversation, not less. We've got Isaac Castillo who says, happy Thursday, brother. Happy Thursday, Isaac. Good to see you. My friend says, thoughts on Brooklyn judge's son arrested for participating in the Capitol riot. He faces felony theft of government property and unauthorized entry. So I saw that headline. I would probably just say that he deserves the same thing that anybody else who was there deserves. And I'm careful about this. I think that there's several different buckets of people here. On the one side, there were very violent people injuring, killing people who were breaking into the Capitol, trying to cause madness and mayhem. I have no problem with them having the book thrown at them. But I do have a problem with some of the other stories that we've been covering where people who were not even there, literally on January 6th, are getting charged with crimes for sending bad text messages. They're being held without bond. They're being held in custody for potentially forever because they had ammunition, because they were talking dangerously, but they didn't do anything dangerously. And they're being criminalized for talking dangerously. So I don't know what this judge's son's story was. I don't know if he was in there, say participating in the Capitol riot. If he's participating in the Capitol riot by standing around or by walking through the Capitol building, sort of as the frat party bucket of people, the people who are just like, oh, this is wild. I'm going to go poke in there and see what's going on. You could easily see somebody getting caught up in that. And so, yeah, he's serve probation, get a fine, pay for some damage, do some community service, read a book on civil participation and, how it should work, whatever that is. But should this person go to prison for 20 years? No, absolutely not. There are some people there who should, but most of the people should not. And even more of the people were not involved at all. And I don't even know why they're being charged. Good to see you, Isaac. Happy Thursday, my friend. We have Jesper Larson says, still watching from Denmark. I like your impeachment template and I will use it against my very socialist uncle. Yeah. Impeach everybody, truthfully. So impeach the guy who cut you off. Impeach your ex-girlfriend. Just impeach everybody because the standard is so low and it's pretty effective. You can literally throw somebody out of office according to the Democrats' own standard. So go hog wild with it. We've got John Kreutz. Impeach Bobbert for not bringing on Miss Faith yet. Just kidding. Another great show. Thanks, John. Yeah. I mean, I probably dug my own hole here a little bit. There's a lot of impeachable offenses, I'm sure, that people can conjure up for myself. And probably Miss Faith has some ideas too. I might be getting served with some impeachment documents from her after this show, but she is going to come on the program. What has happened as a result of, I think, this social media sort of limitation that we're seeing around, everybody on Twitter is losing followers, Facebook's scrubbing a bunch of accounts. We've been going down in followers for like the last 2 weeks or the last week ever since the Twitter Capitol Hill explosion thing happened, slowly losing subscribers on the channel, which just breaks my little heart. We work hard to put this show together and I wanted to deliver value. And so when I see that go down, I'm like, have I lost the touch? What's going on here? Are these shows getting worse? I think they're getting better. I think I'm improving a little bit, but the numbers are going down. What's happening? But then they started to slowly tick back up. So I think what it was is two things. Number one, we had sort of a little bit of a bubble placed around us. Remember, YouTube has changed their terms of service or their policy about talking about some of the electoral stuff. They said, we're going to give you strikes. We're going to limit your channel or whatever. You're not going to be able to post for a certain period of time. And so they sort of just enclosed us in this space, which means they weren't recommending us. They weren't, we weren't popping up in the suggested next videos. And so some of that organic algorithmic growth that we were seeing a ton of prior to that policy change just stopped. Then I think they started to purge a lot of these, controversial accounts, some of whom I think were probably following us. And so that brought our numbers down as well. But yesterday was the first day we started slowly trending back up in that direction. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because Miss Faith will be on here when we cross 100,000 subscribers. So thanks for bringing that up, John. And I would appreciate anybody who can support us in hitting that goal because Miss Faith is really the star of the show, by the way. She's right back there. She's going to come on. You're all going to be blown away. Her words are so profound that when she speaks, it's going to be a life-changing event. I'm excited for it. I know she is too. No pressure, Miss Faith. Isaac Castillo says, Biden announced a $1.9 trillion stimulus plan to address the ongoing CCP virus pandemic. Do you think Nancy Pelosi will stall for another 8 months? No, of course not. No, because they're in power now, right? The stalling that took place was to harm Trump. If Trump would have come back and said, look, I delivered more relief, everything's good, here you go, we're addressing the problem, then that looks good for Trump, doesn't look so good for the Democrats. But now that Joe Biden has won, this political football is now back with Nancy Pelosi, so she can take it, and they're going to cram that through real quickly. So another $1.9 trillion, which is weird because we just passed $2.4 trillion, plus another $900 billion for the defense authorization bill. So we're talking like almost $6 trillion here, just like that, just gone with the wind. So we'll see where that money goes. If it all comes back to Americans, remember, this money comes from us. We pay for it. Like, it's our taxes. The government doesn't produce anything. Okay, they're not inventing stuff and licensing it or creating a product that people are buying. They're just confiscating this wealth from all of us and then spending it around. So of that $1.9 trillion, I'd like to see where it goes. We knew that the $2.4 trillion omnibus bill was being just sort of spread out throughout the world to all different people, all different countries that had nothing to do with America as far as I could tell. But it's all part of the big grift. But I'm sure that $1.9 trillion is going to get put to good use, right? We have chairman of the board. The AJC is promoting wearing pearls on the 20th to honor Kamala Women's Empowerment. Yes, literally calling on people to wear pearl necklaces to honor Kamala Harris. Sometimes the jokes write themselves. I'm not even going to comment on that one, Chairman. Way too spicy for me, my friend, but we'll just let it sit there for a second. Just let that sit there. Let me take a sip of this water. Oh, yeah. A little bit parched. All right. We have another one from S. McKay says, modifying Section 230 is not enough. Removing immunity will prevent any smaller companies from growing. Only option need to break up these monopolies. So good point on that, S. McKay. I'm thinking about a different framework for this solution. I'm thinking about a concept called digital civil rights. Okay, you have civil rights to do a lot of other things in this world. Why don't we have some digital civil rights? Kind of playing around with that framework in my head. I think that might help solve some of this problem. You keep Section 230 immunity. Part of that protection is if you stand by and uphold your digital civil rights, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of participation. And if they violate your civil rights, you lose Section 230 immunity. That's when the floodgates open. Seeing if I can make an argument for that. Doing a little bit of research on it right now. It's not ready, sort of half-baked, but we'll see what I can come up with. We have another one from Sharon Quidney. She says, yes, pardon Snowden and Assange. They are real heroes. Yes, I agree with that. I mean, truly, these people have been through hell as a result of exposing our government's own malfeasance. They shouldn't be dragged through hell. They should be treated as heroes because they are. Isaac Castillo says, I heard Legal Eagle's Legal Beagle is illegally regal. Oh my goodness. You are a good answer to Legal Eagle. Thanks for kicking A on your channel. Well thought. That is some alliteration right there, folks. Alliteration. Legal Eagle's Legal Beagle is illegally regal. Woo! That was well done, Isaac. I like it. We have another one from Hidden Prophet. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Yes, patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Yeah, this is the long game, folks. What we're seeing right now, this is the long game. Everybody wants action right now, but just let this stuff settle in. Just let it sink in for a little bit. They just impeached Donald Trump for a sentence and some other statements that he made for the past coming months. They deplatformed him. You're seeing this major expulsion of an entire political ideology off the internet. That is not going to mature well. It's not going to be a good evolution. There's going to be a big response, but it's going to take time. So patience is key. Isaac Castillo, Dershowitz is excited about what Biden will bring due to the fact that he started out his career as a defense lawyer. He did the 1994 crime bill, though. Dershowitz is kind of hard to figure out. I'm not real sure what I need to go listen to that. What is he excited about? What is exciting about Joe Biden? I have no idea. We have, okay, so Sabo's given us some clarity on this. That came from Animal Farm. Four legs good, 2 legs better, Animal Farm. Somebody asked me about Animal Farm the other day, and I just don't even remember it. I mean, was that something that you read in like 5th, 6th grade? Because that's when I think I read that book. But I could be totally wrong. Some other questions, getting close to the end. We have Seiji Takahari says, so Proud Boy was using free speech to the extreme. Was there after the riot and happened to have bad things, fruit of the poisonous tree all the way. It's a good point, right? So what he's talking about is called fruit of the poisonous tree. It's this concept in law that if the police did something illegal to get access to bad information, so let's say they broke into your home, they should have gotten a warrant, they didn't. They thought they had some basis to get into your house, but they didn't. Like there were no exigent circumstances. They thought they were, but they really weren't. They break in without a warrant. That's an unlawful break-in. They find illegal drugs. They prosecute you for the illegal drugs. You make an argument. They shouldn't have been there in the first place. They should have never been inside the building. The penalty is that the cops don't get to bring those charges against you. They don't get to prosecute you for those illegal drugs because it's fruit of the poisonous tree. They can't, eat the fruit of something that was poisoned. They don't get the benefit of their unlawful activity. And, we'd have to look into the specifics of the case to see if there's any way in that procedure where you can sever the resulting fruit from the underlying misconduct, but it's a good legal point. We have All right. We got a question here from mbrandy315. Miss Faith, please ask Robert, can a private citizen serve articles of impeachment? Can a private citizen serve articles of impeachment? What if Trump is the write-in candidate and receives 270 electoral votes? So Donald Trump, there are no votes to be received anymore. So the votes have already been counted. That part of the question is done and resolved. I don't know that a private citizen can serve articles of impeachment. Maybe I should have looked that up. Maybe it's possible. I have no idea. I was just drafting this sort of facetiously just because it's kind of fun and easy. And you see how ridiculous their argument is when you sort of try it on yourself. You see what a joke this whole thing was. But certainly, I mean, if there's an ability to serve articles of impeachment, I'd encourage you to do it. But if not, just send it to your congresspeople. Have them do it. Send them a draft. Say, hey, we know you don't like to do any actual work. I did the work for you. Copy and paste that. Give it to your intern. Go file it. See what happens. We have Brickley77. We thought Trump was playing 3 and 4D chess, but he was playing Connect 4 and tic-tac-toe. You could certainly make that claim, right? Everybody was saying he's going to just release everything and unravel the whole thing. And when we sort of look back at it, he kind of got played in a lot of ways, I think. Another one from James O'Keefe. All right, so this is what Miss Faith was talking about. Breaking: Twitter Insider secretly records the CEO Jack detailing agenda for further political censorship. We are focused on one account at Real Donald Trump right now, but this is going to be much bigger than just one account. It's going to go on for much longer. Hashtag expose Twitter. So here it is.
Express yourself in whatever format, manifestation feels right. We do intend to do a full retro, as I said in my note. It is going to take some time. And then the other thing, just to close out a little bit, we are focused on one account right now, but this is going to be much bigger than just one account, and it's going to go on for much longer than just this day, this week, the next few weeks. It's going to go on beyond the inauguration. We have to expect that. We have to be ready for that. So the focus is certainly on this account and how it ties to real world violence, but also we need to think much longer term around how these dynamics play out over time. I don't believe this is going away anytime soon, and the moves that we're making today around QAnon, for instance, is one such example of a much broader approach that we should be looking at and going deeper on. So the team has a lot of work and a lot of focus on this particular issue. We also need to give them the space and the support to focus on the much bigger picture, because it is not going away. The U.S. is extremely divided. Our platform is showing that every single day, and our role is to protect the integrity of that conversation and do what we can to make sure that no one is being harmed based off that. And that is the focus, and that is the color we want to provide.
There you have it. Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, recorded by one of his own employees, an insider whistleblower at Twitter, recorded saying this is going to be much bigger than just one account, revealing some censorship. You can see our motto at Veritas, our organization protected by an army of citizen patriots. We've had over a dozen people reach out to us this week with video, evidence inside Twitter.
Wow. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. There you have it. So his statement then apparently, so that came out on 1/8. So that was 6 days ago. His statement that we just played on this show was from last night. So I'm not sure if anything happened between the 8th and the 14th, which we're at today, that would have caused that change. Yeah, we already talked about it. It's a 12% drop in their stock. It's $51 billion of market value wiped off of the face of Facebook and Twitter collectively. A lot of money is being lost. And so he comes out with a nice public statement to say, we're thinking really hard about this. Sort of, we're kind of sorry. We're trying to improve. But 6 days ago, that wasn't the case. He said, this is long. This is coming. It's not going away. Donald Trump's limitation was just the beginning. So, right, you can be your own judge of that. I mean, I think we've already known what Twitter is inclined to do. They've been censoring Donald Trump for the entirety of the election. They've been sort of tagging and limiting, and I would call it censoring, COVID stuff, election fraud stuff, all sorts of problems that they deem to be problems have been flagged and tagged on their platform. So I don't think anything's going to change in the near future. I'm going to look into this story a little bit further because I want to see sort of what the context was around that. Was there a longer clip? Was he talking about, this is going to go on specifically for violence accounts? Like I said, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt until he gives us a reason not to. We got plenty of reasons not to, but this is new information from Jack Dorsey. I don't have any hope for Twitter that it's ever going to revert back to something that is more inclusive. I think it is becoming an echo chamber, and that's what they want. They don't want to foster creative thought. They don't want to give their opponents a forum. They just want to create a sort of bigger company that generates more revenue, that crushes competitors, and they want to do so in a way that is in alignment with their worldview. They want to continue to have their party, their chosen party, in power, and you can't do that if you give your opposing team a little bit of leeway, a little bit of running room. Cut that off, consolidate their power. They've done an excellent job of that so far, so I don't predict that is going to change at all. And our final super chat of the day, the one and only Wolfgang Deo. Wolfgang Deo is in the house. Wolfgang's been a little bit quiet. He says, I impeach myself for, number one, being super quiet while enjoying the discussions others have. LOL, still here. Just weird having my own rights attacked. Well, Wolfgang, it's good to see you. I do notice when you're not here, and I get a little bit worried for you. So I'm glad that you're back, and I appreciate the support. I know it is a little bit weird, sort of having your ability to express yourself just vaporized by big tech, and you sort of by association are deemed to be guilty if you've had any unlawful thoughts or any dangerous thoughts concerning time, for sure. And so let's wrap it up there. We'll close it out with Wolfgang. Thanks for joining in and chiming in at the very end there, Wolfgang. Much appreciated. A couple quick things before we sign off. As a reminder, if you're not already a subscriber, we would love it if you did subscribe, because it's a lot of fun to have you here. The conversations are much more lively when we got people here participating. A thumbs up, a like, a share would be very much appreciated as well. If you could send this show to a friend or a family member and just say, hey, we have a fun time. We have good discussions. We had an impeachment party today. Come on, join the impeachment party. Invite them along. Maybe they can draft their own documents and go hog wild like the rest of us. We'd appreciate if you did that. The slides, the templates are available in the description of the video, but the slides that we went through, those are going to be available in the Discord server, along with a copy of my book. This one right here, it's called Beginning to Winning: How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Justice System. I wrote it last year, June 2020, and it's available on Amazon if you want the hard copy, but the PDF copy is available in the Discord server. You can pick that up for free. No issues there at all. We'd love to have you come check it out. And lastly, but not leastly, we do run a criminal defense law firm here in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have an awesome team of people. We help good people who've been charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope so that they can help get things back on track in their own lives. We're very good at what we do. We offer free case evaluations. We would be honored and humbled if you trusted us enough to send somebody our way, because we'll do a great job. We help people. We do an excellent job. So anybody that we empathize with their situation. We know we can help. They'll leave our office better than when they came in. So we, once again, really much appreciate that. Other than that, my friends, that's it for the program. Until next time, we'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place. It's 5 p.m. Arizona time, 4 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. Central time, 7 p.m. on the East Coast for Watching the Watchers. We hope that you do join us. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Sleep well. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.